Salute, salute.
Yeah.
Salute. Welcome, people. You on the
Hey,
Khalil Jibran experience. One time for your mind, two times for your spine. We got the God in the building today. We got the great Baruti Labray. Clap it up for that. Clap it up for that.
hey, peace to the God, Khalil Jibran.
Salute, salute, salute.
Salute, salute.
Yes, sir.
Uh,
It's a,
nice
it's a
outfit too.
salute, man. Thank you. Appreciate you, God. I'm feeling the classic Labray jacket. You already know.
Oh, thank you, thank you. Keep it fundamental.
Yes,
Keep it
sir. It's a lot of
fundamental these
history right
days.
there.
Thank you, appreciate you. Blessings, blessings.
So how's everything been going? I haven't spoke to you in a little second. What's new?
Yes, things are well. I'm still learning. I'm sure that I learn every day. So as long as there's something to learn, then there's motivation to keep going. So
Absolutely.
doing pretty well and making the best out of life, making the best out of the time. How about with yourself?
The same. And really focus on like um expanding in ways that are authentically me. Because sometimes like with art and especially with the industry I'm in, as far as hip hop,
Right,
um, you could get boxed into certain type of stereotypes that's like have nothing to do with you. You
right.
know, so
Understand.
so what I'm learning from other MCs that I respected, what they've done after rap, and I'm getting inspired with that now during rap. For example, Joe Button and Nori with their journalism, with their podcast, from KRS One to speaking at colleges and writing books and literature to Lupe Fiasco teaching lyricism in schools, and same thing with Mickey Fax. So just looking at all these different aspects to really just not cage myself in, and that's when you put yourself in a very compromising position.
Agreed. Agreed. That
Right.
makes a whole lot of sense right there. Makes a whole lot of sense right there because
True.
with a lot of the stereotypes that imposed upon the black male, it's just that with the music, which is something that we don't control economically or anything in this world, we
Mm,
don't control institutionally, whether folks think that we do or not. Like you said, they try to atomize and compartmentalize us into
absolutely.
squares, and they dictate to us how we should exhibit our behaviors only
Absolutely.
if it serves their best interests. But if it's not within their best interests, then there's trouble.
Big trouble. And we already seen what going against the grain looks like with this recent stuff with Kanye and Kyrie.
Undeniably,
You know?
undeniably.
So I guess kind of starting the conversation, how do you feel about that situation? Because my relationship with you, I know you as a very astute historian, a very astute scholar who always grounds himself in scholarship and the facts in the most diligent manner. So I'm very interested in your perspective on this.
Hey, thank you. I appreciate you for inquiring about my perspective on things. Yet, first and foremost, I'm just a student in the scheme of things. Like, I appreciate all of the titles, but before anything, I'm a student. And
Salute.
as far as I'm breathing within this biological organism that I'm in, I just want to continue to learn. And then from continuing to learn, that's when we get closer to logic, and logic brings us closer to the truth. And then through the truth, that's when we get to the facts of things. So,
Mm,
as it relates to Kanye West and also as it relates to Kyrie Irving, these are folks that are exhibiting their perspectives. And through my evolution and through my maturation, and I'm sure that you probably noticed this, digitally speaking, like probably from the outside, I've been laying low a little bit as far as being very critical of folks that are melanated, whether I agree with them or disagree with them, because that's just keeping a lot of the confusion that has been imposed upon us for the past 400 plus years in perpetuity.
right.
So it
Right.
doesn't make sense to do that, meaning that for folks that are victims of an oppressive system, of a demonic system, of a divisive system, and also of a system that commoditizes and also objectify us for their agenda, I don't think that I have a place or a position to even chastise someone that looks like me who's a common victim of
Mm,
this system that we're living in. Even
right.
though it's easier said than done, as a student that learns, I'm always critical of something because I'm one with my own perspective on things, but I try
Right.
not to take it to certain levels, especially if it's someone that is a a fellow victim of the system. Like for
Copy.
example, like when we look at, and I'm going to get to your answer. I'm trying not to go on a tangent, but I'm just trying to put things into perspective as we're
I'm
communicating.
I'm walking with you, God.
Yes, sir. Salute God. Yes, yeah, yes, sir. Like for example, I was looking at some of my family members, my older family members' birth certificates from that were born in like the 50s and 60s, and under ethnicity it says Negro.
Mm,
So the reality of it all is this: the fate for a lot of us, no matter what respective industry that we're looking to get into, or whatever endeavor that we're looking to get into, is like a lot of these devils in the past have sealed our fates way before we were born. Because if the person that was born in the 50s and 60s that's related to me has Negro on their birth certificate, that means that if they procreate, who are they going to procreate? Who are they going to procreate? They're going to procreate a Negro. And then it
facts.
gets to the epistemological question: what is a Negro?
Mm,
What does a Negro do? Why is
mm,
there a Negro? What is the purpose of a Negro?
mm,
Told one that I'm or whoever procreated me or has a ancestry of mine is a Negro. You see,
mm.
what purpose does a Negro serve?
Right.
You see, so the thing is that we need to be very scientific when it comes to looking at what's going on, and this all is interrelated as it relates to the question that you asked about Kanye West and Kyrie Irving. So
Right.
when we look at folks that express their perspective or their opinion on something, whether
Mm-hmm.
it's factual or not, we need to understand that we need to go to the root of a situation. Because if you go inside of a garden and you see weeds in the garden, if you pull the stems out, the weeds are still there. So if we're
Absolutely.
going to get to a problem and really understand it, we need to get to the root of that problem.
Right.
And the thing is that when we look at folks like Kyrie Irving, Kanye West, you, me, or whomever who's melanated here in this country or even the world, our fate has been sealed. And if we're going to rectify a lot of these issues that we see today, then we need to go to the root cause of that problem. And that problem goes back in history. And we may think that, oh, we have gone far. No, things have just metastasized, evolved, and catalyzed into another form just in the age of digital technology, just in the
Wow.
age of machine learning, just in the age of
Wow.
artificial intelligence.
Mm,
Things are still the same,
right.
just transformed. Energy is not created or destroyed, just transferred and transformed. So when we speak
Mm,
about Kanye West and Kyrie Irving, what we're seeing on display is that they are not qualified to speak on anything, whether we agree with it or not. Because according to the First Amendment of the Constitution, that's the amendment as it pertains to freedom of expression, freedom of speech. But according to that same Constitution, based on representation of the political systems in this country, based on Congress and based on the House of Representatives and the Senate, melanated people were considered three-fifths of a citizen. So it makes one pose the question: are they violating so-called constitutional law, so-called law, by speaking
mm,
perspectives?
mm.
You see, we get to a lot of answers through questions and answers. And questions and answers, we may not want to get the answer, but at least the answer could lead us to the right direction, whether we like it or not. You
Absolutely.
know, because the truth could hurt us, but it could set us free as well. We
Indeed.
have to make the decision on that. You see, so as it pertains to that, it's like things haven't changed, and whether we agree with the perspectives or not, we see an example of it. Because within the hip hop industry,
Right. Right.
there's there's a narrative that's being imposed on us as it relates to show offism, self-aggrandizement,
Mm,
material gain,
mm,
being condescending towards those who don't have those same possessions or don't have those same so-called opportunities. But then we have to ask the question: what is an opportunity, and also the opportunity to do what? You
mm,
see what I mean? And the thing is that
mm.
music is just one aspect of culture, and music falls under the umbrella of entertainment. Now, the thing about it is that entertainment has an inextricable connection to a culture and also to all other elements and activities as it relates to human life. And as it relates
Absolutely.
to black people, I think that we get so caught up into gluttony or gluttonous behavior or show offism to the point in which we don't understand the root causes of the problems or the rut that we're in.
Right.
And the thing is that the root cause and the root problem of what we're in is racism. And the
Mm.
thing about it is that me myself personally, I tried to run away from it and I tried to deny it multiple times through my development. But
Mm.
the thing is that if we look at things from a metaphorical standpoint, it's like this: growing up in the inner city, and you could relate to this, or you probably witnessed this, or you probably heard about this. When there's a bully in the school or a bully in the neighborhood, you could try to take another way home, or you could try to avoid that person. But guess what? 9 times out of 10, that bully is going to meet you home. Or if that bully doesn't meet you home, they're going they're going to try to recruit someone else to get you because they're trying to get validation from that bully because
Facts.
that person is scared of that bully himself. So he thinks that in order to have a cordial relationship with that bully too, for him to avoid getting attacked by that bully, they'll try to victimize the victim for the bully to the point in which the
Right.
bully doesn't have to do anything. So in this case, when we talk about the bully as it relates to what's going on right now, that bully is the racist.
Mm.
You see, and I'm talking about the racist and powerful positions.
Right.
You see, and it's been the same trajectory of people for centuries because it passes down. You see
Right.
what I'm saying? So if we're not going to be able to change things for the better, which could also be tumultuous, tedious, and also excruciatingly painful. But the thing is that at least we could get to the root of a situation, and hopefully, when folks could sit at the table and be honest with one another, and I'm talking about folks that matter and folks that are influential, then we could really have a real discussion besides wasting time.
Right.
You see what I mean? And that's really what's going on. But I do commend Kanye West and Kyrie Irving for standing up and expressing themselves unapologetically. You
Absolutely.
see, I do
Mhm.
respect that, and I don't think that they had the intent. I don't know them. Of course they had to speak for themselves, and they're very vocal and outspoken people that for their themselves in all respects. But the thing is
Right.
that I'm sure that they weren't trying to hurt anyone. They were trying to enlighten people that look like us about
Right.
what's going on from their own way. They're not scholars or anything of that nature, but they're folks that are conscious and they're folks that are aware of what's going on. So they're doing the best that they can while
Right.
still remaining in their lanes. One being very competent in athleticism, specifically basketball. The other one being competent in legendary and entertainment and also in fashion designs and various other things, but still having a sense of consciousness there. So, from my perspective, it just shows that a lot of the illnesses and wounds from the past have not been healed.
Gotcha.
Whether we want to say that they have been or not, they have not been healed. They just transformed and evolved in the technological form in the 21st century. So I guess you could ask another question, because the thing is that I just gave an answer based on the question that you asked pertaining to that. But if you want to stay on this topic, I guess you could ask, deeper questions within this paradigm.
Yeah, I want to segue a little bit for those who might not know you or might aren't familiar with you. I kind of want you to get into a little bit of your story, your upbringing, and the things that made you who you are today, so they can get a little insight behind your insight.
Okay, well, with me, I'm Barut, Barut and Kafele, Barut Lebre, or Lebre for short. I'm from Jersey City, New Jersey, over on the East Coast, Hudson County. And, I've been around different places. I have family, throughout New Jersey, throughout the South. And just like most black people, there are common conditions, whether we're talking about in the various inner cities or even in the rural areas or even living in the suburbs, because as long as the system that exists today is there, you have different versions of that system in which we're victimized of, no matter where one is in the state, in the country, or unfortunately, even the world. So, I
Absolutely.
came up in a conscious household, which enabled me with the opportunity to think. But the thing is that, with me, I decided, to think for myself, like any human being. So I had the foundation there, to read, coming from an educational household, an educational pedigree, you know, uh, parents in education and advocates of education. grandparents coming from the South, working on the farms as sharecroppers. One in South Carolina, one in Virginia. You see, so with them making the sacrifices to come here for supposed better life, they done very well with the best that they could, and but in the midst of it, still in Jersey City, still around the trenches. They say Jersey City's the most diverse city in the country, even past New York. But the thing about it is that we need to be careful with the term diversity. You see what I mean?
Mm.
Because race is a social construct in and of itself. And the thing about it is that the purpose of race and the concept of race is racist in and of itself.
Mm.
Because why are you representing the race? One is representing the race to practice what? According to my understanding of the English language, and I do the best that I can with it. I'm not saying that I'm perfect in this language that I had to speak in my our ancestors had to speak due to obvious reasons. According to my understanding, whenever you add a suffix of ist or sometimes er to a noun, that means you're the practitioner of that said noun that you're adding the suffix to. So when we look
Absolutely.
at the noun of race and then we add the ist to it, then that means that you believe in the concept of race. That means that that person is a racist. You see, so
Word.
the only purpose for practicing race is to practice racism for the purpose of material gain, for the purpose of glory, for the purpose of self-aggrandizement, for the purpose of ego, and for the purpose of fun, recreational gratification, and also the incentive to exploit other people for whatever the purpose or the agenda may be. So going back to Jersey City, where I'm from, going back to the question that you asked, yes, it's diverse, but if we see groups of people that are struggling, that are depressed, or that try to pride themselves in their race, they're just doing that so that they could try to cause conflict with people that don't belong to that race, so that they could feel like they have a sense of power when there's only a small group of people that have power, and it just so happens that they have a certain phenotype to them, with not a lot of melanin. And what I'm saying is not racist, because I don't have that power to practice racism. I'm
Mm.
just, like I said in the beginning of this commentary, I'm just a student. I'm just an observationist of what goes on around me. So
Right.
when we say, oh, they're diverse, who said that this race, a group of people that look like this are part of this race? Who said that a group of people that live in this part of the world or are from this part of the world are this race? You see what I mean? Like
Absolutely.
as far as my understanding of genetics, and also as far as my understanding of science, there really isn't a race. It's just a species, and it's the human species. And it just so happens that the human species come from a geopolitical designation that we call now Africa. You see
Mm.
what I mean? But the thing about it is that all these other classifications are just used for purposes to maintain racism, and any other group of people that practice racism on other groups of people, or try to practice racism, because they really can't practice racism because they don't have power like they think they do. All they're doing are just being agents for the group of people that are the real racists.
Mm.
You see what I mean? So
Right.
the thing is that when I'm in the so-called most diverse city, now we got to question what is diversity, and if diversity, if we prioritize diversity based on the concept of race, or or should I say color, then that means that that's racist right there. Because why
Mm.
there can't be diversity based on height, or
Right.
diversity
Right.
based on based on you know anything else? You see what I mean? I had a brain fog. You see, people, there are a lot of traits that makes someone an individual. There are a lot of traits that brings about differentiation when it comes to people. But the priority in this country and in this world is color, and still in the 21st century. So it makes me pose the question: have things really changed, or are things really the same, and they just evolved to the point in which folks think things have changed, but they're not critical thinkers? So in Jersey City, I went to PS38. Before then, I went to a black-owned Christian school, Mount Pisgah. I went to a Catholic school for a year. That was when I started to be around other ethnicities. That was like in third grade. So that's when I really
Okay.
started to notice racism. That's when I started to notice racism, and then a lot of questions started to pop up in my mind. I didn't have
Really,
the intellectual
you
sophistication.
noticed racism back then.
Yes, because the thing is this, right? All right. Like in places like Essex County, where on my father's side of the family, where they reside, like it's mainly homogeneous for the most part, But north to north, it could be a little bit of an exception because you do
Absolutely.
have the, so-called Hispanic or Latino community. But what color is a Hispanic or Latino? That's a rhetorical question, but we'll get to another time because I want to stay on
Right,
topic. I keep
right.
jumping around, right? So, but the thing about it is that back then that's when I really started to notice it because I went from going to an all black Christian school to then being around a whole bunch of groups of people like Filipinos,
Mm,
Chinese, Indians,
right,
blacks too. Obviously, Latinos, or Hispanic or Latinx, whatever they want to call it, whatever classification that was imposed upon them that they accepted now. Different groups of white people, like the Italians and Irish and Eastern Europeans or Ashkenazis who call themselves, who are classified as Jews,
right.
because I'm talking about color. I'm not talking about religion. Just in case,
Mm,
certain kind of folks are watching and trying to put certain classifications on there. I'm,
facts.
salute to, the two brothers that we mentioned earlier, but this is a different type of situation. But anyway, that was when I started to notice race and having Caucasian teachers coming from the suburban parts of New Jersey coming into Jersey City teaching. So that's when I noticed that things were different, and that's when I noticed that I was different because I was
Mm,
reminded every day from students of different races and even my race that I was different, and the teachers definitely noticed and let me know in different ways that I was different. You see what I'm
would,
saying?
would you be able to share some of those ways, like some examples, so we could just get a taste of that? Pause.
Well, like for example, I grew up in a conscious household.
Mm,
So when you're a baby or a child that's just born, whatever that goes on in the household or at your family members' houses, right? You think that that's normal, that the whole world is like this because that's all you're
right,
exposed to. You have a
right.
myopic perspective on things. But it's not until you're around different groups of people with different worldviews that you notice that things are different and that you're different. Like for
Mm,
example, like they'll teach certain things in the history books or they'll teach certain things in the classroom, and when you ask a question that is dialectical to what goes with the educational curriculum, then you're viewed as crazy, then you're ostracized. And that's
right.
why I have a lot of solidarity with Kanye West and Kyrie Irving to an extent, because even though I may not agree with everything that is said or done by them, because I'm an individual and I'm my own free thinker as well, I can relate to being stigmatized. They call Kanye crazy. Well, listen, they probably were calling me crazy before they were calling Kanye crazy, and Kanye probably has me by 13 years. They were trying to put me in
Mm,
special ed since I was 8 years old.
really?
Yeah. Yes.
Wow.
Yes. And the thing about it is that like some of the reputable folks, as it relates to the niggerization process of the streets in Jersey City, that became reputable in negative ways. Some of these folks I knew because they were trying to put me in special ed with them.
Really?
When in all
What,
actuality,
what were their reasoning for trying to put you in special ed? Like,
well, for being different. And the thing about it is that as far as I can remember, I've always been the same kind of person. I've matured a bit, but as far as the foundational personality that each individual has, I think they've all always had that since I could remember.
right.
Like like I'm inquisitive. I'm a very serious person, but I like to laugh and joke around sometimes. Believe it or not,
Hmm.
I've always been that kind of person as far as I can remember. But at the same time, though, I'm not one to always acquiesce to a certain agenda, and I'll ask questions
Correct.
to seek my curiosity because I'm not the smartest person in the world. But then again, we have to ask the question: what is smart? You see what I mean? But
Yeah.
but but for being different, you get stigmatized and get labeled. So that's why when I see Kanye going through this, it's like that's why I have sympathy towards them because I've been going through that during my rudimentary stages of my development from all people. You see what I mean?
Right.
Because people say, "Oh, just black on black," or so-called yellow on black, or red on black, brown on black, the whole rainbow. You see what I'm
Mm,
saying?
right. Right. Right.
Like I've been stigmatized. You see, but the thing about it is that's what comes with thinking on your own. That's what comes with not accepting things like how they should be, and knowing that things are not normal. You see what I mean?
Absolutely.
No matter what people say, no matter what influential person, no matter what an influential person may say, or things of that nature. So the thing about that is that I've been through that, and then after that 1 year, I told my folks I wanted to go to public school, but went to public school. Same thing. The grass isn't always greener on the other side. You see what I mean?
Right.
But the thing about it is that through going to public school, I noticed there were issues as well, with people of other ethnicities and some of my own ethnicities. But one of the things I've always noticed is that you know even through these experiences, the solid ones, right? And when I say solid, I'm talking about folks with morals and principles, but they're still tough. They always respected me
Cop.
wherever I went. You
Right.
see what I mean? It would always be the ones that's trying to get validation.
Right.
The
Right.
so-called real ones, I've always had a problem with, even to this day. But the
Mm.
so-called real ones, even though we need to ask the question, what is real and what is a nigga, and we still gotta break that down. I don't care. It may hurt some feelings or the so-called wrong people's feelings, but if we're going to fix these problems, we can't have our cake in it too. We gotta get there. But
Absolutely.
the so-called real ones, for the most part, I'm just saying for the most part, things have always, things have always been cool with them, and some of them I'm cordial with to this day. But a lot of the problems will be from a lot of these a lot of these deaf, dumb, and blind folks that are still victims of this racist ideology which has been imposed upon us. Because really, no human is of no exception, especially if you're a part of this. Gonna sip of this water, especially if you're a human of color. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking about this today too, ironically, right?
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking about this today. What is the real definition of a personality? What is the real
Ooh.
definition of a personality? And the definition that I came up with today, early this morning, was a definition of a personality is the individualized reaction to the system of racism. If you're a person of
Mm.
color, no one is of no exception, meaning that we're not even being our true ideal selves. You cannot be your real true ideal self if you're living under a system of racism, and we've been living under a system of racism for conservatively 600 years. And I'm being conservative. It could be longer than that. We may have to go back to the Roman Empire. But then again,
Wow.
I'm talking about all 196,940,000 square miles of the planet Earth. None of us are being our true selves. I'm of no exception. We
Mm.
all have individualized reactions to the system of racism, and that is our identity. That is what a personality is. And this question randomly came to my mind this morning. Before I ate breakfast. Like, what is the definition of a personality? When people say, "Oh, that's not who you are," or "be you," how could you really be you under the system of racism? And if you are being you, that means that you have to take on the identity of a prisoner of war. You have to take on
Mm.
the identity of, unfortunately, a victim. You see, because I noticed that when we spoke that you're in the red pill space. So
Facts.
when, when we look at the red pill, they talk about being an alpha male. But if
Right.
we're living under a system of racism where, excuse me, the white male is the institutionally dominant species among all living creatures on this planet, then how could we really be an alpha male
Mm.
if we don't control anything?
Damn.
Is that really an alpha male? Is that really a
Mm.
sigma male?
Mm.
Is that really high value? Or if one is
Mm.
high value, valuable to whom? Valuable for what? What makes
Mm.
you valuable? Or why are you valuable? And what is value?
So in this same line of thinking, I just want to interject the one question in there really quick.
Yes, sir.
Um, so in that same logic, I'm just gonna play, I guess, devil's advocate, quote unquote.
Sure.
How can we expect black women to respect us under these type of conditions?
Exactly. Exactly. And that's why, if you notice, I've been laying low a little bit as it relates to that kind of content. Even though
Right.
I was being comical, genuinely comical, but still having a genuine care and appreciation for for women that we classify as black women under the system
Absolutely.
that we're living in. But the thing about it is that, check it. I haven't gone out on a date in a long time, especially since I've classified myself as red pill years ago. You see, but
Mhm.
now I'm not really into labels that much, but the red pill will always be in my heart. You see, because the
Facts.
pill is what took me on a certain trajectory to get back to my priorities. You see what I mean?
Facts.
But the thing about it is that I would linked up with this girl, because I wanted to take a break from my studies for a little bit. Peace, salute, definitely, definitely. But pardon me, sorry about that. Yeah, we're on
Mhm.
real time, as you can see.
Facts.
But the thing about it is that she said there are no good, there aren't that many good men, there aren't that many good black men and things of that nature. So I did, me, and this is the thing. As far as me speaking for myself, I try not to make statements these days that much. You see what I mean?
Right.
If I don't understand something, I try to get into the inquisitive mode,
Hmm.
because that's how these folks took over the planet. You have a lot of these conscious folks that say, "Oh, they stole this from us, or they learned this from us." Yeah, and they did. They under the conditions. Unfortunately, they did what they were supposed to do. They beat everybody else because they were the most inquisitive folks on the planet.
Mm.
You see, they were the
Mm.
most inquisitive folk. Oh, what's on the other side of that ocean?
Facts.
Oh, what's on the
Facts.
other side of that ocean?
Facts.
Well, who are these people?
Yeah. What type of resources do they have?
What type of resources do they have? Exactly. There we go. So I had to ask her, what is a man? Because you're
Mhm.
doing all that talking. I'll let it go. Let it go. Complain. Have your degradation ceremony. I don't get
Right.
offended. I've been called way worse than anything that you're saying. You see,
AKA sign language.
say that again, sir.
I said AKA sign language.
Right,
Cor-
right. Exactly. Even in other languages, like I've been assaulted in other. And so the thing about it is that it's like, so I let it talk. Oh, men this and whoop de whoop, men that, black men this. So I had to say, okay, well, politely, could I interject? What is a man? And she was doing all that talking. She could have answered the question.
Mm.
You see what I mean? So the thing about it is that eventually, we got to a consensus, based on, her understanding and all of that. But I said, look, is under the systems that we're living in, I hate to talk like this or sound like a so-called hotep that y'all like to chastise on social media, but it's
Mm.
challenging to be a man under the systems that we're living in. If you're a
Facts.
prisoner of war, if,
Facts.
if you're a prisoner of war, or if you're
Facts.
a slave, you know, whether you're a woman or a man, or no matter what age you are, you're nothing but a prisoner, or you're nothing but a slave, especially in their eyes.
Facts.
Meaning that you're not really calling the shots like how you want to, and also you're deprived of your manhood because of the system that you're living in. So it's challenging to lay the law down in the household, or it's challenging to put the program together within the household,
Yes,
because
sir.
we work directly and indirectly for groups of people that do not have our best interests at heart.
Absolutely.
And they've proven that for centuries.
And then you have, two parents working if there is a two-parent household.
Hmm.
And then the woman, she's only respecting really the boss that she's working for. You know what I'm
Exactly.
saying? And then 9 times out of 10, if the kids see the woman not respecting the man, then they not neither
Exactly.
one of them is gonna listen to the man. You know what I'm
Real
saying?
talk. Exactly. Eloquently said. Eloquently said. Under these systems that we're living in, it's challenging to be a man. It's challenging to be a father. It's challenging to have a family. It's challenging to have any of that, because the way that this world is set up like a prison, or set up like a 21st century plantation.
Facts.
Whether we like it or not, we need to call things spade a
Yes,
spade.
we
We need
are.
to be
Yep.
honest with one another. And it's not me making excuses, because we all need to strive to do the best that we can under the conditions that we're living in. But I had
Mhm.
to have the lady understand, like, look, no matter who you talk to, it's still going to be the same thing, because of the system that we're living in. Whether you're talking to a black man with millions of dollars, billions of dollars, as we saw in real time, like you mentioned during the inception of this conversation, or talking to a man, that's living in the projects. The way that the
Mm,
system is set up is to deprive people based on their color of certain opportunities to maintain a specific system because it's been benefiting them for centuries upon centuries upon centuries, and they don't have any incentive to change it.
absolutely.
And yes, yes, sir.
So, 'cause to um go to the other side with it to kind of turn the temperature down on race, we've noticed billionaires that we watch grow to become billionaires, they've gotten divorces.
Right.
Between Warren Buffett, I believe, got a divorce.
Oh, he did.
Uh, Jeff Bezos,
Hmm.
Elon Musk, and Bill Gates.
Hmm.
So, uh, what does that say to you? That from us black men in our communities, we having problems because of racism. Then you have racism affecting still millionaires and billionaires on that high level. But then you go over to the other side to high level white men, and they're kind of still having these same, not the same exact identical issues with women, but it's still a kind of tug of war thing.
Right. Well, what the thing about it is this, as it relates to, you know, the issues of the, opposite sex. This is the thing. When it comes to, human interaction with one another, especially the opposite sex, there needs to be an understanding. You know, the tough questions may need to get asked in the beginning, and, and,
Absolutely.
and then from there making a determination on if if there's a meeting of the minds, even after the tough questions, how folks are going to proceed. And if folks agree to proceed, then that's cool. And if they don't agree to proceed, then that's cool. Or if there's a breach of contract, then folks could sever that agreement and go separate ways because a marriage is nothing but an agreement. It's nothing but a contract anyway. We have these Hollywoodized concepts of romance and all of that. But that's all that marriage is. So if folks agree to go in another direction, then they just agreed to go in another direction for whatever the situation may be. You see what I'm saying? So as far as that goes, folks like Bill Gates and folks like Warren Buffett, I'm sure that they have a whole lot of other options, other than the wives that that broke up with them, and of course they have more than enough money, I'm sure, to compensate them based on the laws that are passed as it relates to divorces. And a lot of the time it's the woman that gets compensated and not the man. So I'm sure they'll be fine.
Right. So, like, what are these? 'Cause I feel like the 20th century woman in America, or 21st, whatever you want to call it, is
Hmm.
kind of is different than we've ever seen. Because we're living in like one of the safest times in history, if I'm not mistaken.
The same
Um,
times.
and we're having a lot of first world problems. I feel
Mm-hmm.
like if we were in countries where safety wasn't so promised, it would
Hmm.
be a whole different thing. And I feel like everybody would be centered in their own gender roles more, you know?
Yeah, that's an excellent point right there. That makes a whole lot of sense right there. Because the purpose for the man is to protect, is to provide security, and in the beginning of human evolution, during the days of the hunter-gatherer societies, before the Neolithic revolution, where we had sedentary societies where folks began to settle instead of hunting and living in the survival mode of the hunter-gatherer, dealing with predators of other humans, of the other species as well. It incentivized collaboration between the genders, and
Right.
also that's when we had the inception, theoretically, of the concept of trust, because trust is weakening yourself for the betterment of a group. That's what the definition of trust is in essence. so
Mm,
so when we have trust, that was when the woman relinquished her individuality to the man for the purpose of security during a lot of the perilous times of the hunter-gathering society. And then eventually, when you had bands of disaggregated people that started to collaborate for the purpose of trust, because one person may specialize in one thing, this other person may specialize in another thing, or this,
right.
there were incentives to create that trust factor. And then obviously with some civilizations, that trust factor became successful, and then we started to have civilizations like ancient Nubia, ancient Kemet, ancient Sumeria, ancient Babylonia, and things of that nature. Ancient China, and the
Right.
various civilizations of human history. But that all came about with trust. Like once humans started to come together and conquer, any predatory threats, they started to plant. That's where we started to see the agricultural revolution of the Neolithic revolution, and then through that evolution, we started to see mounds, and then we started to see architecture, pyramids, and things of that nature. Complex societies with different specializations of labor. So the thing about it is that what happened was during the last century, we started, the last century and also the century before then, we saw the passing of the amendment, either the 19th or the 20th Amendment, of women's suffrage, which gave women the right to vote. And then eventually, we started to see the evolution of the feminist movement from that.
Mm.
Yeah, early feminism, like with the Sanaka Convention of the 1800s. I don't want to mess up the year right now,
Right.
but of the 1800s, you could look into that in Sanaka, New York. You had your Susan B. Anthony's and your various others, fighting for women's suffrage and all of that. And then eventually that was passed, and also salute to Australia. Australia was one of the first countries to embrace women's rights, even before the United States, but
Okay.
that's
Okay.
another discussion right there. Australia. But the thing about it is that around the time of the 50s and 60s, we started to see the sexual revolution, like women competing with men, women wanted the same rights as men, women thinking that they could get compensated the same amount of as men
Any
for doing the same work.
anything you could do, I could do better.
Exactly. Even the songs started to come out as well, a lot of the feminist oriented songs. So and also a lot of the time what the people in power do is they divide people to cause confusion,
Facts.
to fulfill their agenda. So when they saw the civil rights and the Black Power movement happen, they said, you know what, this is an opportunity in order to divide that by dividing the women and the men. So we're going to push this feminism agenda. So okay, we'll pass the civil rights bill in 1964, but we noticed that years later that the beneficiaries of civil rights is really white women more than anyone else.
Facts.
You see what I'm
Facts.
saying? And the thing is that that trickles down to other ethnicities, and other ethnicities, which are social constructs in and of itself, and women from these other ethnicities capitalizing off of that, but at the expense of the males within that specific ethnic enclave. And
Facts.
so then we have issues of the family structure, and we see that phenomenon, mainly in the Black community here in the so-called industrialized world, whether we talk about the United States, the UK, France, Germany, wherever Black people are in the so-called industrialized world, even South Africa, the same thing. You
So
know,
how do you feel like sexual liberation and what now people coin as hookup culture is affecting the family unit and black culture as a whole today?
well, it just causes confusion because
Mm.
we need to ask the question: what is the purpose of hooking up? Hook up
Mm.
for what? Sexual liberation. Okay, liberated to do what?
Mm.
How you sexually liberated? Liberated to do what and why?
Mm.
And what's the constructive outcome of that so-called liberation?
Mm.
Or are you really liberated? Or who's
Mm.
liberating you? We got to ask these questions if we're going to get to these answers.
Facts.
You know, we,
Facts.
we have to ask these questions because what it sounds like to me is nothing but an insidious scheme to cause more confusion. You
Mm.
see what I'm saying? When I hear the term sexual liberation or one saying they could do what they want with their body, no, you can't. No one could do what they want with their body under the system, that we're living in. You see
Facts.
what I mean?
Facts.
You can't. You see, like there is no separation of body and state.
Mm.
So one needs to be very careful with that. Because you're saying your body, your choice, you do what you want with your body. You did what you want with your body because the people in power allowed you to do what you wanted to do with your body because that was their plan for you to do what you're doing with your body. You're
Bingo.
fulfilling their agenda. So you know
Bingo.
what you want with your body. If you listen to people like me, you, and the other folks in the red pill community, and you decide to do that, then guess what? Then you got some problems, and they'll let you know that you're not sexually liberated.
Mm.
So sexual liberation is another hustle.
Mm.
Real talk. The
Sheesh.
more the more kids, the more illegitimate births, the more bodies in the prisons. The more jumpsuits to manufacture and
This
sell.
is facts.
The more food to sell
This is facts.
inside of them places.
This is facts.
The more construction contracts to build these institutions of deeper containment or deeper
Yep.
detainment, excuse me.
Mm-hmm.
You see what I'm saying?
Yep.
The, the more the more that folks will make from the drug trade, the more that the
Absolutely.
alcohol companies will make from these
Absolutely.
illegitimate births.
Absolutely.
The, and also the more that these abortion agencies will make, the more money,
Mm.
and also more money that the medical industry makes from the
Mm.
tools needed for abortions.
Yeah. So
You see
what
what I'm
was the
saying?
name? What was the creator of Planned Parenthood? What was her name?
Margaret Singer.
Yeah, Margaret Sanger. She created that for eugenics.
Exactly, exactly. She's a white supremacist.
And it's pretty ironic that she created that for that intention, and yet here we are today. Women are fighting to keep
Right.
that. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly, exactly. And the thing is that, and I'm just going to say this, and I'm just going to reiterate this, or I'm going to state this. I didn't even state this previously, so I can't reiterate something I haven't stated. So,
Right.
for the women that are listening, I'm not here to tell you what to do or what not to do as it relates to when you're pregnant. I have my own perspectives, obviously. And for those that know me, they have an idea of my perspectives. But that is up to that is supposedly up to you anyway. Supposedly, with a capital S. But so it's not my job to tell you what to do or what not to do. I'm not saying I'm not saying on this platform if I'm pro-abortion or anti-abortion. I'm just here to make the viewer think.
Absolutely.
You know.
Absolutely.
But yes, Margaret, going back to Margaret Singer, she was a feminist and a white supremacist. To answer your question, and the
Right.
eugenicist, yes.
So another thing I want to touch on too is during like the heat of the pandemic, whatever, I had a lot of free time to explore a lot of different creative things that I never would have ever got to, right?
Yes, sir.
So I got to rewatch a lot of shows like The Sopranos, like The Wire, of course Game of Thrones. I watched that before the pandemic. But I
Mm-hmm.
got to catch up on a lot of things.
Okay,
So in
salute.
so in this process, I'm on HBO app and I see Sex in the City.
Okay.
So I'm like, yo, I remember this was always syndicated when I came home from school.
Right, right.
You know what I'm saying? So and it was always fascinated to me, as a child, when you see anything with sex in the title, it automatically like
Oh yeah,
stimulates you in a certain way. Like, what is
definitely.
this? You know what I'm saying? So I always seen that as a kid, but I never I guess opened that door to really understand what that was.
Right.
So long story short, um I'm watching it, I believe probably sometime around last year,
Okay.
and it was just fascinating to me, the whole genre of romantic comedies. And you know how you hear a lot of women saying these days, yeah, I'm a hopeless romantic. I
Okay.
love watching chick flicks. So to me, it's like a certain like hypnotization and indoctrination to believe and buy into these ideas of romanticism, of a happily ever after, of the quote unquote perfect guy that's going to come sweep them off their feet. And this is coming
Mm-hmm.
from since even before Sex and the City, from Disney.
Right.
You had the princess complex, and she gets saved by the white knight.
Yeah.
So it's like the psyche of the women that we're growing up with has a kind of, I guess, in a way, been under attack with these certain like ideologies and narrative that they kind of force feed young women since children, and then they
Right.
grow up looking for that and trying to replicate these stories that they've been fed. You know what
Right.
I'm saying? And I say that to say that watching that show, Sex in the City, it was a very unhealthy lifestyle, realistically. Like
Hmm.
the woman that was the main character, she was kind of like financially irresponsible, buying a whole bunch of shoes. It was just a whole myriad of things, but it was selling a lifestyle that's not really sustainable. Hello? I don't know how he got froze. I don't know what happened. We're gonna wait, let him get some time back in. We ain't about to cook. Shout out to the viewers. A little bit of technical difficulties. We're gonna give him some time to come back in. Hey, there you go. Salute, salute, salute.
Hello, testing, testing.
Yes, we back live.
Hello, we're back on.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Excellent, excellent. Yes, sir. You were talking about Sex in the City. The lifestyle was unhealthy. The women would spend it frivolously.
Yeah, so I just want to hear your thoughts on this that whole genre of just I guess romantic comedy and I guess just the history of etymology of romanticism, being I guess you could break the word down from to be a Roman antics. So I just would like to hear your perspective on that.
Well, to be honest with you, off the top of my head, I can't accurately or factually, state, the origins of it. I could only just, speculate based on my understanding, But of course, romance comes from, etymologically comes from the concept of, or should I say, the concept of the ancient civilization of Rome. So the thing is that when we hear Rome, we hear romantic, and since the fall of the Roman Empire, basically the so-called ghetto tribes of the Roman Empire became the most powerful people institutionally in the world, because you had the tribes like the Saxons, and
Really?
you had other tribes, the Vandals and all that. Like these groups of people were called the Vandals. That's where we get the term vandalism. So the
Wow.
various tribes of the Roman Empire, the ghetto tribes of the Roman Empire, ghetto, became the institutionally powerful people throughout the world now. They consist of Western Europe, and eventually they consist of the royal families, in which they're all related no matter the country anyway. When we talk about the French people, whether we talk about France, whether we talk about the people of Belgium, the people of Great Britain, which consists of England, Wales, and Scotland, or we talk about the people of Portugal, Spain, Germany. You see, a lot these tribes, these were originally tribes of the Roman Empire, the
Really?
so-called the savage tribes of the Roman Empire. Yes. So,
Wow.
so the thing is that, according to their mindset, according to their history, remnants of what was considered civilization comes from Rome, and that's where we have the Romantic languages. Your French, your Spanish, your
Mhm.
Portuguese, and things of that nature. You see what I mean? Because they are derived from Latin, which is considered to be a language of the Roman Empire. And like I said, whenever you add the suffix ic to a noun, that means that you're describing something. So when we talk about romantic, we're describing Rome. So eventually, through the evolutionary process of art, I would assume, of the arts, that's where, we started to, hear about stories of Romeo and Juliet. But when we look at Romeo, the root noun in Romeo is in the name Romeo is Rome. So the
Facts.
thing is that Romeo and Juliet was considered to be a love story, according to, according to, the culture of Western civilization, and of course through colonialism, imperialism, global invasion. A lot of the culture and a lot of the stories were transported as well to a lot of the colonized, people throughout the world, colonized people of color around the world. So that's where we have the concept of romanticism throughout the Western world, and also throughout the world, since so-called, Western powers control the world as it relates to our way of thinking, speaking, and acting. You see, so through that, we have the evolution of what's considered to be romantic in the 21st century, and anything that is a part of culture, the mainstream culture, is there for an agenda, and is for a reason. It's for a reason to keep the people in power, and to keep the people that are not in power in the same stagnant position.
Mm, mm.
You know.
So to flip that, ask about that inversely on the flip side. How do you feel
Mhm.
about the term toxic masculinity?
I would have to ask the question. What is masculinity and what is toxic?
Mm,
That's the question that I would had to pose to the people that coined that term. What is masculinity and what is toxic? You see,
mm,
that's what I would ask,
mm.
so that I can have a better understanding of things, because that term doesn't really make sense to me, to be honest with you. You
What
see,
if they?
if
What if? Go ahead.
oh, no, I'm cool. Pardon me.
So what if they say, "Oh, toxic masculinity is anything that any like that's trying to control somebody and keep them from being the free spirit and things like that."
Okay, anything that tries to control, you said.
Right? Because it seemed like toxic masculinity is like um anything that goes against the earlier topic we spoke on, that sexual liberation topic. So anything that holds
Hmm.
people accountable or responsible for their actions is deemed like, I guess, toxically masculine or part of the patriarchy.
Okay. Well, this is the thing about this. This is the thing about that. We need to be careful with a lot of these terms, like toxic masculinity, or being sexist, or being a narcissist. We need to be careful with these terms, because these terms are there to cause confusion and to cause divisiveness among
Mm,
people that have been oppressed for centuries. Because
mm,
when we talk about these terms, under the system that we're living in, only a few group of people have the privilege to even exhibit those kind of behaviors. And that's
mm.
the biggest bully in the world.
Facts.
So we need to be very careful with that, because I can't think of a woman that is sexually liberated. If you're so-called sexually liberated, that means that if you're supposedly sexually liberated, then go against the agenda. Prove to me that you're sexually liberated. Go against the agenda. If you cannot be liberated from the number one problem affecting human beings, then we cannot talk about all these other kind of liberations. We got it like affecting people all over the world, even white people, believe it or not. The common white person, believe it or not, he doesn't know, he or she doesn't know either, is the race problem. So if we're not liberated from that, then we can't talk about sexual liberation. Because according to that
Mm,
context, I tell the feminists, I don't know what that is.
mm,
We got to go to the root.
mm,
I'm not a STEM kind of person. If I see weeds in the garden, I'm trying to pull it out from the root. You see what I mean?
mm.
Or if I have a wound, I can't put a band-aid on the wound. We gotta clean that wound out, and we gotta stitch it up. You see what
Right.
I'm saying? So when people say, "Oh, sexually liberated," liberated to do what? Liberated, and liberated from who? Oh,
Mm,
liberated from these ends, or liberated from these no good ends, or these black men. What power do black men have?
mm,
If
mm.
a black guy raises his voice at you in the house, you're gonna call you're gonna call the race soldiers
Yeah, the
with
slumber
badges,
keepers.
who
Yep.
are called police.
Yep.
So
Yep.
so who's oppressing you? You
Mm.
see, that's what I ask.
This is facts. This is facts.
So like
Wow.
I said, these terms are there to cause confusion.
Mm.
These terms
I
are
like
there
how
to
you.
cause confusion. We got to go to the root.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
You see
Wow.
what I'm saying?
Mm. You gotta let that breathe for a minute. That was a great
Yes,
answer.
sir. Yes, sir.
'Cause it really, all it does is cause confusion, because on these sites and these different podcasts, it's just a lot, like a lot of clickbait, people recycling the same
Mm-hmm.
topic. And even when you get on Facebook, sometimes you just you know who's being triggering and things like that. So that was a great answer. So
Exactly. Exactly.
Good.
Yes, sir. Salute. And don't get me wrong, like some of it could be entertaining and all of that, but we got to be very careful, because a lot of this is by design. A lot of this
Absolutely.
is by design, which is why I try my best not to feed into any of this. You see what I mean? Like for example, someone may say something about black men and all that. Like I try not to feed into any of that because, like I said during the inception of this, I've been called much worse than what I've been called on social media during when these folks try to supposedly educate me or supposedly debate me, and every every time they lose anyway. But really, we need to be very careful. I need to be very careful as it relates to that. Why am I debating folks that look like me about pertinent
Mm,
topics that are affecting a lot of us all over the globe? What is
absolutely.
the gain or the benefit or the incentive of doing that?
Absolutely.
How am I helping to liberate the next generation by going back and forth with folks that don't know any better? Because by doing that, I'm showing that I don't know any better. But as a student, I don't know a lot of things and I'm still learning every day, which is why I had, an epiphany out of many epiphanies that I'm going to lay low from doing that. Because how am I going to argue with another victim about a topic that was imposed upon us to cause more confusion?
Facts.
Because
Facts.
even back during the days of agricultural slavery, not this technological, Negroes fighting with one another in the plantation and then calling the overseer or the master in the big house in order to mediate the conflict.
Right.
That's what that's like. So if I'm arguing on social media with a victim of oppression who calls herself a feminist, or a victim of oppression who's a male and calls himself a feminist, guess whose platform we're on? We're on a platform with someone that don't look like us. So the person that owns the platform is the slave master, and it's like, well, I'm just a field Negro arguing with other field Negroes about
Fact.
about an instigation that was created by the slave master. Slavery never
Fact.
ended; it just evolved.
Facts. So to get deeper into that,
You know,
right? There's some viewers that's gonna watch this who's they don't really have a clear lineage of history of how slavery evolved and how we got to this land.
mm-hmm,
And I know you spent some time in Africa. I know you went to Egypt. And I'm not sure what
mm-hmm.
other parts of Africa you've been. So for the
Yeah,
viewers, and particularly
Nubia.
in
Mm.
Nubia, okay.
Yeah,
So, so
which is still under the jurisdiction of Egypt. Which is and parts of Nubia is in Sudan as well.
hmm. So for the younger viewers, I just if you can, I would like you for you to like give them a one on one of like I guess how we got here from transatlantic slavery, and with a few uh time references throughout that. You know what I'm saying?
Understandable. All right. Well, okay. Let me state this first. Throughout human history, unfortunately, there has always been slavery. Now, there are various definitions of slavery, but I'm going to use my definition of slavery. You see what I
Mm,
mean? Because I was only told to look to Webster because the people that were in power, that have been in power for all these centuries, said we need to look to Webster or look to Shakespeare and people like that as it relates to what that means, right? Slavery is nothing but the mistreatment of people based on a certain classification of who that people supposedly belong to, according to the people that are enslaving a specific group of people. So slavery
mm,
has always existed, but for the sake of this discussion, we'll talk about the transatlantic slave trade. Well, according to my understanding, right, and of course I can't get into all of it, within this certain segment of time, but you know, someone by the name of Cristobal Colon, an Italian, so-called explorer or navigationist, who we know as Christopher Columbus.
mm,
He went to the coast of West Africa and
mm. What year
noticed
was that?
well sometime in the 15th century. I would say that his first expedition was probably like around the the 1440s or the 1450s. You see what I mean? He arrived on the coast of Africa, and the thing is that in the continent of Africa, they didn't have the concept of race that the Western Europeans have, that we live under now, or that we understand now, or have, or think that we have an understanding of now. You see what I'm
Right.
saying? Because their concept of race is based on color, and meaning that if they see a group of people that don't look like them, they'll classify them under the same classification. You see,
Right.
as long as it suits their agenda and as long as it suits their interests. So when you start to have people like Cristobal Colon or Francisco Pizarro or Henry the Navigator, and it's questionable if he was a true navigator in the sense of the term, and the various conquistadors, conquerors, and navigationists, they started to go to different parts of the world to obtain natural resources which would benefit the royalty of the respective country in which, or respective kingdom in which they came from. So they started to notice people. So when they started to travel different parts of the world around the time of the 15th century, and the 15th century would be the 1400s, because whenever we say a century, it is usually the numerical number which is higher than the actual years in which we're talking about. Like for example, the 20th century was the 1900s, so the 21st century is the 2000s. You get what I'm saying? So going back to what we're stating right here, they needed people in order to work the agricultural lands. So first they started with the prisoners of their own kingdoms in Western Europe. But the thing is that, it's not so many of them. So they started to work in abundance. And they said, we have a whole bunch of people on this continent of Africa that we could commoditize to the point in which they could work in this new world in order to cultivate our lands. So we
Right.
had Africans that were transported to South America in the Caribbean to work the sugar plantations. We had Africans
Hmm.
that were transported to the continent, to what we know of today as the United States. There were enslaved folks that were in Western Europe, that worked within their agrarian facilities and also within their cities. So we had the triangular slave trade in which we had Europeans involved to work in the Americas, and they got the workers who worked for free in Africa. But then eventually you had a lot of the indentured servitude programs in which you got they started to import East Indians and brought them to South America as well. And we know a lot of them today as the Guyanese people. Whether we talk about the British Guyanese or the French Guyanese or the Dutch Guyanese, but eventually those countries became Guyana and Suriname. You see what I mean? But the thing about it is that, to get back to the subject matter at hand, we were brought to the Americas and these various parts of the world in order to cultivate the lands that these Europeans invaded, and they would go back to the Europe to say that they discovered that land, when in all actuality, people of color have been in the Americas for thousands of years, engaging in trade with the indigenous people or the autochthonous people of the Americas called the Native Americans. And some stayed there and created civilizations there. So global trade has always occurred. But I'm not going to say they always occurred, but you know.
So, what do you say to the people who? Because there's some people that I know that are close to me that say, black people, we never came from Africa and we was always here. What do you say to that?
Well, this is what I would say to them. I say to them like this, like with anything, the process of coming to the truth or coming to facts is through questions and answers a lot of the time. So I would have to ask them for the evidence. I would have to
Mm.
ask them for the corroboration. And who told them this? What evidence does that person have? What proof do they have of that? And then
Facts.
from there, I'll let them explain. Because there's evidence of the transatlantic slave trade. And also,
Facts.
I've taken DNA tests myself. To
Mm.
give me an idea of where I'm possibly from on the continent, or where people that have the same common ancestry as I are from in on the continent of Africa.
Right.
and according to my DNA test, I share common ancestry with folks that come from the areas where that are inhabited by the Yoruba people,
Mm,
and also by the Hausa people who
mm.
mainly live in modern day Nigeria and live in modern day Benin.
Same.
You know,
Word.
yes, sir. So we need to go. We need to be scientific. Let's do it. Documentation beats demonstration.
Right.
I'll ask for the
So
evidence because
so when did
these days I don't have time to go back and forth with folks.
absolutely, I feel you on that. Remember the
Yes,
pandemic?
sir.
We said 1400 or better.
Absolutely.
um.
Oh yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
when did
Exactly, exactly. Right,
so
right.
facts. Salute. When did the first African slave touch soil in America?
In the
Do-
continental United States, according to my understanding, according to my understanding, it was 1619, but they were indentured servants. In Jamestown, Virginia.
Mm,
It was if I'm not mistaken, it was 19 enslaved Africans who were brought here for indentured servitude. But going back to what I said a couple of minutes ago, the definition of slavery is the mistreatment of a group of people based on the social classification, and that's a mistreatment of people right there.
wow.
Confiscating them and bringing them to another part of the world to
That's
work for
up.
you.
I can still apply to situations today.
Undeniably.
Yeah.
Undeniably. We need to be very careful when it comes to words, because one of the ways in which they legitimize and keep the system of oppression in this age of technology is through the use of words and using convolution and confusion of words.
Yes, sir.
You see what I'm saying? But according to my understanding, I would say, as it relates to the continental United States, 1619. But then again, we could say even before then, because you had an enslaved African by the name of Estevanico, who founded who discovered Arizona and New Mexico for the Europeans.
Mm.
When,
What was his name
because
again?
Estevanico, or Little Stephen. If we were to translate it from Spanish, because don't forget, before there were the Dutch and the British that capitalized on the so-called New World, the New World for them, an old world for us. You had the Spanish conquistadors and the Portuguese conquistadors, and then eventually, the French as well, and then the Dutch and the British came later. That's why when we look at New York was called New Amsterdam, and also if you've been to Jersey City before, you may see streets like Bergen Avenue or Old Bergen Road or North Bergen, or you go to Bergen County. That is a
Fact.
Dutch name right there. You see what
Wow.
I'm saying? That's a
Wow.
Dutch name, because that the whole Hudson and Bergen County was the first municipality. What was one of the first municipalities, or if not the first municipality in New Jersey. That township was called Bergen, from Bayonne, modern day Bayonne, all the way up to, like, somewhere in Bergen County. That was called Bergen, the township of Bergen.
Wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah, yes sir, yes sir. It's something that I just learned as well. You see
Wow.
what I mean? But the thing about it is that you had Africans, that were, under the Spanish, that were in, areas of modern day Florida, that were in places like modern day New Mexico, not modern day Arizona, and even California, as well, because California is named after a mythical African Moorish queen, believe it or not.
Cali.
You know, exactly. I don't want to mispronounce the name, during this recording, but one could do their research and see that California is named after a Moorish queen.
Mm.
You know, because California was a part of the country of Mexico. The whole West Coast, and even Texas, or Teca, was a part of Mexico, because
Really?
that was a Spanish colony, and
Mm.
Africans worked on those colonies and those plantations.
Mm. So let's get into colonization. 'Cause that has a direct impact on how we live today and the language that we speak
Okay.
everywhere in the world. So
Yes.
when did colonization start? Because to my knowledge, there's three most powerful colonies, which was the Spanish, the English, and the French, if I'm not mistaken. Correct me if I'm
Right. Right.
wrong.
right. As far as colonialists um on the Western Hemisphere, yeah, they were the most powerful. But we can't leave out the Portuguese because Brazil has a huge land mass and has the largest black population in the world as far as country goes outside of Africa.
Okay,
You
okay,
know,
okay.
so we can't leave out the Portuguese either.
Absolutely, absolutely. Okay.
You know, because Brazil is huge. As far as landmass goes, I think Brazil is geographically larger than the continental United States. If we don't include Alaska, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, and it's a lot of Afro Brazilians there that's prevalent in Brazil. So I've heard.
It right. It's exactly like Brazil has the largest black population outside of Africa, and
Really?
or African population outside of. Yes, yes,
Wow, I didn't know
definitely,
that.
definitely. Right. Brazil is predominantly black in and of itself, but we need to be careful because, like I said, the people that rule the world and rule these so-called countries are very scientific. They, according to their politics, one could be black, designated as black in America based on their phenotype, but based on their social status, if they reach a certain social status, they're considered white. And you have some
Right,
folks that are considered brown when the brown person could be darker than the person that could be considered white.
right.
You see what I mean? Because their politics is a little different over there for the purpose of divisiveness.
Got
Just
it.
like in South Africa, you have you have the so-called black population, and then you have the so-called colored population. When in America, they both would be considered black people.
Hmm,
The colored people who are on the west of South Africa, which is called the Western Cape, where you have Cape Town, and then from they're 10% of the population, and they're considered the colored, and then you have the black population, and then you have your East Indians, and then you have your white people mainly come from who mainly come from the Netherlands and also come from Great Britain.
hmm,
You see, and they speak Afrikaans, just like how the coloreds speak Afrikaans. When really they're just different shades of brown or different shades of black. So like I said, these races, these different classifications or these different races are used to cause nothing but confusion.
hmm, hmm,
You know, that's all they're there for, to cause confusion. Like a person saying, "Oh, I'm Jamaican," or "I'm Haitian," or "I'm foundational Black American." Like, why? What's the purpose of representing these different classifications? To cause confusion and also to mistreat people or to oppress people or to be egotistical towards someone else that looks like you. That's all
hmm,
that it's there for.
hmm,
You know, because there's a concept that I've been thinking about lately, and the concept I'm thinking about is this. And someone by the name of Mr. Nelly Fuller, who was the teacher of Dr. Francis Cress Welsing, who wrote the ISIS papers, or should I say Mrs. Francis Cress Welsing, because I don't know if she has a doctorate or not. Not that it matters anyway. And she wrote the ISIS papers, but he stated that Africa, Asia, and America, the three A's, don't exist. That's what he states. Because he said that if they exist, then they exist to produce justice. They're nothing but concepts, because the only government that exists is the system of racism, meaning
hmm,
that there are no countries or no corporations in the world that matter. The only corporation in the world and the only country in the world is racism. You see what I'm saying? Because the only purpose to have these different tribes or these different ethnicities is to mistreat people. But really, the only people that you're mistreating are people that are non-white people. You see?
hmm. Wow.
So,
So
yes, sir.
so what's the solution to the confusion and the division that's constantly been thrown and thrusted upon us? Like, where do we go from here? And like, what's the steps to continue to be on that upward trajectory?
Those are things I'm still thinking about. But as far as with me speaking personally, like on a micro level or even on a small level or on an individualized level, it's by living by living by a specific code and to make sure that all our interactions and all our actions or anything that we do are of constructive value. Meaning that every second or every minute of the day should be focused on ending racism
Mm,
or ending division or ending all of these problems, meaning that everything that we do, meaning that if we're not doing that, then basically we're wasting time, and we're passing on the trauma towards the next generation so that they could inherit it. But of course, realistically speaking, if we're going to really end a lot of this, it's going to take generations anyway, because these folks didn't take over the world just in one generation. It took multiple generations. But the thing is that on a small level, there's certain things that we need to stop, going back to what Mr. Fuller said as well. He's basically said we need to stop gossiping on one, stop gossiping, stop being gluttonous, or stop showing off. We need to stop fighting amongst one another. We need to stop robbing one another. We need to stop
Facts.
extorting each other. We need to stop quarreling, with one another and expecting for the white supremacists to mediate situations. We need to stop snitching on one another. We need to stop anything that is counterproductive towards our liberation. And and also, as it relates to violence, violence shouldn't be a means of solving problems, especially amongst ourselves, because in the black community, it's like, oh, if there's an issue, or we need to fight one another. No, the only time violence is justified if it's counter violence. And when I say counter violence, that means self-defense. But really, if folks could just ask questions and reciprocate with answers, and ask questions and reciprocate answers until the resolution comes, then that means that we don't need to fight amongst one another. We just use our brains in order to come to an understanding of something. Because
Right.
all it is just benefiting the people that are in power if we quarrel amongst one another, because they are the ones that own the weapons and own the prisons.
This is facts. This is
You see,
facts.
and regulate illicit activities globally. They
This is
regulate it,
it's how the
because
drugs
how is
come
the
in
criminal
here.
going to have exactly? Because how is a so-called criminal of color who is illiterate, or who doesn't know about various parts of the world, going to have access to a weapon, the manufacturing of weapons on the other side of the world?
Hmm.
A lot of them don't know where that comes from, or a lot of these contraband come from.
Nope.
It would only be a select group of people,
Mm.
and it's not who we think they are.
Facts. Mm.
You see what I mean? So
Yeah.
on the small level, is basically, working on oneself.
Mm.
Meaning that if we're going to eliminate these systems, then we have to make sure that we don't support the systems that are put in place in order to hinder us from progress.
So would you say stepping towards
You know?
sovereignty is better for us as a people? You heard me?
Yes, sir.
I said, would you say
Here we
stepping
go. It looked
towards
like the internet was booed in again, but we back on. It looks like.
okay, cool. You can hear me? You check.
Step into sovereignty. Oh,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Within the context, what do you mean by that? I heard you. You said step into sovereignty, but within the context, what do you mean by that?
Really a for us by us model, like something like a Black Wall Street. To where as though we're economically supporting ourselves, culturally supporting ourselves, everything is in house, and we're not outsourcing anything culturally or uh capitalistically. We're just keeping everything in house and circulating between ourselves.
Well, the thing about it is this: it's something that I'm still thinking about myself, and I guess all of us conscious folks or socially aware folks or something are still thinking about this. And also, let me just drink this water right quick. I mean, that could be a trade-off, or that could be a solution right there, as far as that goes. But the thing is that we got to be very strategic and very careful as it relates to that, meaning that we need to have incentives there in order to work with one another. Meaning that, yes, work with one another, it sounds good, but we need incentives there, because economics is based on incentives. Economics happens when one has a resource that they value less because they value another resource more, but then that other person has a resource that they value less, but they value the resource of that other person's more. So then you have a fair exchange, you have a consensus from an economic standpoint, and then that's when you engage in trade. But then with that trade, within the system that we're living in, that medium of exchange would be money. You see what I'm saying? So if we're going to have an economic system to benefit us or for us by us, according to the concept that was just stated, then we need to incentivize that, meaning that we need to have demandable skills or demandable goods or demandable thoughts so that we could do that. Because all economics is the utilization of time and energy. It's not money. That's how we will manipulate it again. Because money
Mm.
doesn't have any intrinsic value anyway. We
Mhm.
we are the reasons why money exists because we legitimize money. So it all depends on us having incentives to work with one another. But according to my perspective, one of the biggest incentives is to, eliminate, racism because we've been in an oppressive state for a long time. But in order to do that, we have to live by specific codes. And I'm not talking about a G code either because the G code is nothing but a trap anyway. I'm talking about a code to eliminate racism.
Right.
See, because the number one problem is the race problem, because we can't tackle the problem of sexism, the problem of classism, the problem of environmentalism, or the problem of any ism until we conquer the problem of racism. I know that I'm sounding like a broken record as it relates to this, but through my own reflection and through my own research, that's the root cause of a lot of the problems that we have today. That's the root cause. You see, and like I said, the process of getting to the truth is through questions and answers. And if we keep asking enough questions, then we'll be able to find out what the root of a lot of the problems are, whether we like it or not. Because the truth, sometimes we don't want to hear the truth. Sometimes the truth is annoying and it's alarming and it's irritating. But at least
Right.
from getting to the truth, we could at least have a foundation to move forward from.
Mm.
You see?
So, what, in your opinion, what is the most logical rebuttal to the racism that we're facing today?
Well, racism will have to be compromised.
Mm. In what way?
In what way? Well, that's something like I said, from a simple standpoint, it's through having a common moral system of agreeing not to fight one another, not to steal from one another, not to extort one another, not to gossip against one another. You see, not to be gluttonous or frivolous with one another because we love doing that. You see what I'm saying? And a lot of this, I'm of no exception as well. And like I said, I'm a work in progress. We all are because, like I said, a personality is nothing but an individualized reaction to the race problem. You see,
Facts.
especially if you're a person of color in the world, and people of color consist of 92% of the world's population. You see, you know, which is why when we hear the term minority, we need to be very careful.
Mm.
My minorities in what capacity? When the majority of the world are people of color,
This is
92%.
facts.
And it could be much more than that. I'm being very conservative with the 92% right
Mm.
there. You see what I'm saying? Because there are some groups, according to the so-called white race, that weren't considered white less than 100 years ago.
Like that. I know there's a lot of white on white racism against the Irish people, right?
We get it somewhere. The Irish, they were considered white less than 100 years ago. They
Mm.
joined the group and they say, you know what? You want to know what your job is? Your job is to be your job is to be the race officers for us. So that's why we
Mm.
a lot of them on police forces.
Mm. Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, on Roots, there was an Irishman that became like an overseer or something like that. Like he came and
Hmm.
started working for the plantation.
Exactly. A lot of them were overseers, and also we need to be very careful when it comes to this. Like I saw a video on YouTube on the BT network pertaining to African American vernacular, right? And the thing is this: black culture, in all actuality, or any ethnicity, right? That's not nothing to glorify or celebrate because we are not responsible for the so-called race that we belong to. Because, like I said during the inception of it all, I looked at my antecedents' birth certificates and it said Negro there, meaning that I was going to be a Negro before I was born. The
Mm.
races basically determined my destiny before I was even thought of. You see what I'm saying? So, oh, I'm a foundational Black American, or I'm a Jamaican, or I'm a Puerto Rican, or I'm Nigerian. That's nothing to be proud of right there, because that means that you are glorifying being, you are glorifying being a part of a certain area of a plantation, or being contained or detained in a certain part of the prison camp, since
Facts.
the world is a plantation and the world is a prison for people of color. You see,
Mm.
so it's like, what are you being proud of? And that's something that I had to think about. And that's me coming from the Pan African trajectory and the Afrocentric trajectory. Don't get me wrong, that's still a part of me, and that's still in me, and that'll be in me forever, and even the red pill as well. But the thing is that we got to start being logical and start using common sense, even though common sense isn't common all of the time. We need
Big
to be
fact.
very careful as it relates to that culture. The culture of what? What does that culture do? What are the habits of that culture? If that
Mm.
culture is not doing anything that is productive towards eliminating racism, and towards providing us with the opportunities in order to better ourselves and to better our children, and also to make sure that that there's balance in the world, then that means that culture is a waste of time and is worthless from my
Mm.
perspective. The culture. I'm a part of the culture. I'm proud of the culture. Proud of what? Why are you proud of this culture? Why is there an existence of this culture? That is nothing. A culture is nothing but a collective behavior of a group of people. But I expound, it is a collective reaction to the system of racism that to benefit the racists.
Mm.
Or it is just a collective response of racism to benefit the racists. That's all that is. That's all that a culture is, according to my definition of it, my modified definition of it, based on my understanding of the world. It's like, what is one proud of? What does that a culture? What does that culture allow you to do? What are the guidelines of that culture? Does that culture stop you from doing negative things that are counterproductive? If it doesn't do it, then one shouldn't practice or glorify that specific culture. You see what I mean? Well, one shouldn't do that because it's counterproductive. So
Facts.
folks say, "Oh, us African Americans, we talk this, or us Jamaicans talk this." Well, guess what? We were in close proximity to Irish and Scottish overseers. So as far as ghetto language or ghetto talk or pidgin English, we learned that from them. So really,
Mm.
that's not even our talk. That's their talk. Like, we be over
Mm.
there, our eyes gonna goes over there. Oh, eating fried
Mm.
chicken and watermelon. No, the Scottish folks, who the English royals and also the English gents called the rednecks, brought that culture to us. I'm not
Mm.
being racist by calling them a redneck. The higher nobility of England called these folks rednecks. That's how
Mm.
Scotland was invaded. And that's why the Irish are still going through hell. Because if they
Wow.
didn't go through hell, there wouldn't be no IRA, no Irish Republican Army, which
Mm.
according to a lot of the Western powers, are designated as a terrorist organization. You see what I'm saying? So the thing about it is that even when it comes to African American vernacular, Jamaican patois, or pidgin English of the Nigerians, or the Creole of Sierra Leone, or any dialect of the Western languages that are spoken by Black people under oppression, that's nothing but us speaking, or that's nothing but a pidgin language or a creolization of the English language that was used to communicate amongst ourselves and amongst the overseers. And for the most part, they were Irish. Because whenever you have a group of people that live in bucolic or agricultural areas outside of the metropolis or outside of the major city, in this case, we're talking about London, then of course they're going to speak a language which is considered to be not sophisticated or not
Right.
exceptional or not educational, because these folks don't have access to the highest noble schools, like
Right.
in the metropolis of London or Paris or Madrid or any of those cities in Western Europe. These were folks that were in the country, or these were folks that were convicts, and they say, you know what, y'all gonna go deal with these devilish melanated people. So that's what we learned so-called ghetto talk. That's cracker language, and I'm not being racist by saying cracker, because that is really cracker culture right there. Cracker culture are the Scottish folks that were considered to be at the bottom of European society, who were brought to the Americas to really oppress us. You see
Mm.
what I mean? But eventually, they got fed up with the taxation without representation, and they overthrew the nobility over there in Western Europe. and then that's when we have the United States.
So
The,
go ahead.
I know you got the stage.
Cause that concept is very very interesting to me of the relationship that we have with Irish and the Scottish people and Southern Black culture in connection to hillbilly or redneck culture.
Hmm.
Um, so I kind of wanted you to go in towards the transition into America getting its independence, I guess, from the British and what the inside of that conflict really was culturally.
Well, well, really, or really, that concept was just the colonists getting taxed, by the British nobility, and also the central bank over there in England, which affected the economy in England. But they said, you know what, in order for us to benefit economically from the economic turmoil that we're going through, then we're just going to tax the colonists over there in the Americas. So, to make a long story short, they weren't having it, and they decided to go to war, and that's where we had the so-called Revolutionary War. To make a long story short.
Mm. So can you give more context behind the statement? The British are coming.
Hmm. Right, because people that are avaricious and people that are in power that benefit from the so-called powerless are not going to relinquish that power easily. So they're going to go across seas in order to maintain their stolen property,
Mm.
which is the Americas, and also the people that work to maintain their property, which are the enslaved Africans,
Mm.
and also the autochthonous Native Americans.
Mm.
You know,
So, because when I was watching Roots, a lot of things became clearer than I didn't notice when I watched Roots as a kid. So, I guess where did the slave masters come from that came and bought these slaves and owned the land? Were they British? Were they Irish?
oh well, the thing is that the slave masters were nothing but the property owners. You see, you had the sailors, or the navigationists, and then you had the overseers. Like, it was a sophisticated system. It was early. People talk about human trafficking. That was human trafficking right there.
Mm.
That was human trafficking right there. If we're
Mm.
going to talk about human trafficking, let's talk about the transatlantic slave trade. You
Facts.
see, and you had the British that were involved in the slave trade. You had French that were involved. You had the Portuguese that were involved. You had the Dutch that were involved. You had the Italians that were involved. You know, you had various groups of Western Europeans that were involved in this human trafficking scheme. Which is
Mm.
responsible for the 100 million casualties of melanated people or Africans.
Mm.
You see, so there were a lot of Western Europeans that were involved, and also we cannot forget about the Eastern European bankers that were involved too.
Mm.
Hmm.
Now, you classify those people as Ashkenazi as well?
Right, they were definitely involved. You see, and a lot of their wealth comes from that, and
Really?
that's oh yeah, a lot of their wealth comes from that. A lot of that generational wealth are on the backs of enslaved Africans,
In what ways? Like,
because because they control a lot of the banks and still do in Western Europe, and also
mm,
throughout the world, since we live in a global economy,
mm.
and also the
So,
insurance companies as well, because whenever you have goods or commodities, you need insurance, and we were commodities, or our ancestors were commodities.
right. Interesting.
Yes,
Mm.
sir.
Wow.
And the thing is this, and when I'm going to be very clear as it relates to this, you know, I don't, or and also, you don't need me to speak for you, but I'll state this for myself, and I'm sure this is for you. We love all the religions. Much love to
Ab-
our Jewish brothers and sisters, our Christian brothers and sisters, and our Muslim brothers and sisters. But just like with every group, you have your good people and your bad people.
Facts.
Like any group, you have your good people and your bad people. So if anyone is offended by anything that's stated on this program by me, then we could look at the facts and we could go from there. Or you need to have accountability and talk to people that are bad apples in your group so that we could rectify this problem as well, or you all could fix it within you all's group. But
Abs-
this is not a program to bash anybody based on their religious classification. I'm
Absolutely.
not an advocate of it. Khalil Gibran's not an advocate of it. We respect
Absolutely.
all the religions. Much
Respect.
love, much love to our Jewish brothers and sisters, our Christian brothers and sisters, and our Muslim brothers and sisters. Much love, kudos, and salute. But at the same time, though, we're going to go through history, and also we are not all angels as well, because people that look like us are the ones that sold us to the Europeans so that we
Let's
could
talk
work
about it.
in the wilderness of North and South America. So we're not off the hook either.
Let's talk about it.
We're not,
So,
we're not off the hook either. Everyone could get it. Everyone could get
absolutely.
it. I don't care if you wear a kufi, a dashiki, a yarmulke, a kufi, or a cross. Everyone could get it.
That's right. That's right, bro.
Mhm.
So let's take it to those people in Africa that was also black. What was their incentives to sell us into slavery?
Well, what we need to understand is this: as it relates to the discrimination of a group of people or the classification of a group of people based on color, that was a new concept that was introduced by Western Europeans with their own specific agenda. Meaning that when we mistreated one another, it was mainly based on tribes, and those tribes were based on geographical locations and separations of bands or groups of people based on tribes that practice nuances within their specific cultures. So our
Just just
mistreatment and our
just
yes,
just the same. Sorry to interrupt, but just the same
that's
way
cool.
as like in the city of Newark or Jersey City, there'll be different blocks in those prospective cities that will have certain feuds,
Yes,
certain tribal feuds, even though
right.
they're basically the same, but is the differences are very nuanced.
Right, right, exactly. There is some correlations there, to an extent. There are definitely correlations there to an extent, because their mistreatment or their divisiveness wasn't based on color. It was based on tribe and still is to this day.
Mm.
You see, if you look at the movie Hotel Rwanda, the Hutus and the Tutsis of Rwanda, but they seem to have that under control, right now. Or if you look at the House of Fulani of Nigeria and the Igbos and Yorubas in Nigeria, you see, or we could look at various tribes, the same thing. The Zulus and the Hosas in South Africa. One could keep going.
Mm. So yeah, I just want you to finish up on what was those incentives to really sell other black people into slavery at that time.
Well, the thing about it is that one incentive is for trade, economic trade, because trade was a business. Slavery was and still is a business. You
Facts.
see, so it's just economic trade, just like you're trading gold or trading coconuts or trading trading silver or trading any natural resource or any commodity. But it's just that human beings were commoditized, and we're talking about melanated people were commoditized to fulfill the agenda of the Western European kingdoms, and also and also the upper nobility, and also the businessmen who capitalize on this human trafficking that we're talking about, the transatlantic slave trade.
Mm. Copy. Mm.
Hmm. Right. So it was a business, and you have groups of people that don't care for one another, who have been in war for centuries or in even thousands of years. So they see, another person or another group of people who provide opportunity. Because, like I said, economics is nothing but the utilization of time and energy. And also within economics, you have exchange or trade. And trade is basically having something of value that you devalue, but the other person has something that you value more than what you have. So you all come to a meeting of the minds, and you exchange with one another. So in this case, that's what happened.
Right. Mm.
But instead, humans were the commodity.
Copy that.
Hmm.
All right. Um. Wow, that was a thorough exploration of a certain period of time.
Yeah, tell
So,
me about it.
another time period I want to ask you about is the time period between 1492 and 1619.
Hmm.
Because 1492, if I'm not mistaken, was that when Columbus landed in America?
Right, the Caribbean, yes, yes, like Hispaniola,
Caribbean.
Cuba, Hispaniola, like that area.
Right. So what was going on between 1492 to 1619 to where the first indentured servants were in Jamestown, Virginia, right?
Right, Jamestown, Virginia, yes, 1619. A land grab, land
Mm,
grab. You had the Spanish conquistadors, in which you had the wars, between the the Mayans, Aztecs, and Incas against the Spanish Empire. You had the Portuguese, and also, like I said, they imported enslaved Africans, to the Caribbean, and that's where you had the so-called creation of a new race, the Hispanics and all of that.
mm.
When really just enslaved Africans, who
Let's get into that too. That's an important concept. The creation of the Hispanics. That's very headline worthy.
Mhm.
Let's get into that.
Right, right. Hey, well, what the thing about it is that when the Spaniards or the Spanish conquistadors needed folks to work the plantations in the Western hemisphere, they needed folks to go cultivate the land. So they had free labor, commoditized enslaved Africans brought to the so-called New World in order to cultivate the land. Those are the indigenous groups, but the indigenous groups eventually assimilated into the African populations and also assimilated into the Spaniard population, and those folks are called mestizos. You had mulattoes and you had mestizos. Mestizos are folks that are mixed with the conquistadors and also the indigenous people, and then you had the mulattoes, who are folks that conquistadors, the conquerors, or should I say the Caucasians, or the white people, who were conquerors and invaders of these lands, and also folks that kidnapped or received Africans in trade to bring over to the Americas. You see, so the thing about it is that around that time, that's when you had the land grabs going on, and they were spearheaded by the Spanish and the Portuguese, and then eventually you had the British and the Dutch
Mm.
and other groups of Western Europeans as well.
Yeah, because I also heard that I don't know how accurate it is that the Taino Indians come from Puerto Rico.
Or the Tainos, yes, they're an indigenous group, indigenous group. You had Tainos, you had Arawaks, you had you had various indigenous people or autochthonous people, throughout the Caribbean. You see, and a lot of their culture, survived, with this newly socially constructed group called Hispanics or Latinos. You know,
Mm. So was were there Hispanics indigenous to the land before the conquerors came in, or was that
now, and the
something?
reason now the reason why is because if we etymologically look at the term Hispanic, we have Spain in that term. Hispanic, Spain. So why are people called Hispanics? Because of the fact that they are prisoners of war or slaves of the Spanish Empire.
Mm.
So really, when a brown or black person calls themselves a Hispanic, they're recognized that they're the bastard child of a conqueror or a conquistador who speaks Spanish from Spain.
Mm.
That's all.
That's very deep right there, brother. That's very deep.
Hey, salute, brother. Yes, it's only the facts. It's only the facts. Not here to step on anyone's toes, but I'm just here to I'm just here to hopefully make folks think.
So around what year was this, I guess, race created?
Well, it was an evolutionary process over time, but I would say it started around 1492 and 1493 when
Wow,
when
okay.
when the Spaniards arrived
Mm.
in the Americas, because
Mm.
there were no Hispanics or Latinos prior to the conquistadors or the conquerors arriving. You just
Was
had
was it
indigenous people.
Columbus Italian?
Yes, he was yes, he was Italian, but he had a working relation with King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella of the Spanish Empire. So
Copy,
in essence, he was a navigator or businessman who for hire.
copy. And Spain had the bankroll for him.
Hmm. Definitely.
Copy, copy. Um, can we get into a little bit of, because in recent news there been some struggles between Dominicans government and Haitian people, I guess, that reside in Dominican Republic. To my
Hmm.
knowledge, they had two different powers that controlled them, one being France and one being Spain. And correct me if I'm wrong. Um,
Facts.
so I guess I want to ask you, how did that happen? How do these two different colonies get like half of each part of the island?
One of the biggest, one of the easiest ways. Steve Biko said this from South Africa. The most potent resource. He didn't say it in these words, but in paraphrasing, he said something to this effect: the most potent resource of the oppressor is the mind of the oppressed. So once you
Hmm.
control the minds of a group of people, you control the culture of the group of people. You control the thought, speech, and action. So whenever you do that, then you could divide the group of people based on who their slave master is. On in Western Hispaniola, their slave masters were French. In Eastern Hispaniola, their slave masters were Spaniards or Spanish. So on one side, they spoke a creolized version of Spanish. On the other
Hmm.
side, they spoke a creolized version of French.
So
But
is
it just
that
so happened, yes,
that's what that land was called, Hispaniola?
yes. And,
Copy.
and you notice the root word, Spain,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah.
You see what I mean? And the French and the Spanish were going at it amongst one another, and the genius of the Africans in Western Hispaniola is that they capitalize on the division between those those white people over on the island, because the Spanish and the French were at odds with one another, and the British as well. So the brilliance of Toussaint Louverture, Dessalines, and the various others is that they capitalized on that, and they kicked them out of their side of the island, and that's when Haiti was born on January the 1st, 1804, after the revolution kicked off in August of 1791, if my memory serves me correctly. And forgive me if it doesn't, for the Haitians and Dominicans that are listening, or should I say, the brown, the black or brown people of those areas, or people
And
of
they were
color
like
in those areas.
they were like one of the only colonies that got the independence.
Yes, yes, and that were recognized for their independence, but suffered as
Right.
well, and are still suffering for that.
Yeah.
Yes,
I heard they still paying France or something like that. Or they in debt to France for that.
right, exactly, and the United States have blood on their hands as well, but one could do their homework on that. You see.
Right. Okay. Wow.
Yeah, yes, sir.
Um. So I want to ask you about the caste system in Great Britain, the king, the queens, and the bloodline, and that role on colonialism. Because was Britain not the first colony? Which one was the first and the most prolific
The first what?
colony?
Uh, you mean in the Americas?
Yeah, or just in the
Or in the
world?
continental United, in the world? I'm trying to understand the question. The first colony, or you asking the first colony? I don't understand the question. I'm sorry about that.
Maybe I'm using the wrong verbiage, but you have these different world powers that was going to different parts of the world and taking over land and taking over the people. So I'm
Right.
asking in terms of Great Britain, being that they're English and a lot of the world speaks English. Um, how did the king and queen system affect their modes of, I guess, conquering?
Well, we see it to this day. You know, there was an old saying back in the 19th century and 20th century that the sun never set on the British Empire. Meaning
Mm,
that the majority of the world was controlled by the British Empire, the British royalty, the British government, and the British upper nobility. So they invaded various parts of the world and made sure that their captives spoke English. Case in point, the lingua franca of the world, in essence, is English, especially for folks that are trying to assimilate and get ahead. Folks have to speak English for the most part. But
right.
Khalil, 1 second. Let me just quickly do one thing. You mind if we get back in 2 minutes?
Absolutely.
I cool. You want to keep this live stream on, and you just want to talk to the viewers or something of that nature?
Absolutely.
Okay, excellent, excellent. So give me 1 second. Pardon me.
Got you. What's going on, good people? It's Khalil Jibran, one time for your mind. As you can see, we got Baruti the God up in here. We're 2 hours live into the stream. We did a lot of covering of things. We went over Baruti's childhood growing up in Jersey City. Him first experiencing racism. What are some other things we covered? We covered some of hypergamy, women, different parts of the world, colonization, slavery. Um, this is a very intelligent brother, easily one of the most smartest people that I know, hands down. So I'm just enjoying this stream. Shout out to everybody that's tuned in. It's Khalil Gibran Experience. We got a lot of viewers on YouTube right now. Shout out to YouTube. Um, yeah, man. If you guys didn't know, we got the Khalil Gibran Experience out now. Let me pull that up. Khalil Gibran Experience out now. Random this Sunday. We got hard copies of that. New Jeru Soldier is out. Deluxe coming soon. Make sure you get some of that. You know what I'm saying?
School's out. The icy ladies is here. Get your dollars ready. Lil Jibran 1 time for your mind, 2 times for your spine. Always doing this grind. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I said it's 88 degrees. Ice cream trucks coming, you hear the melodies. The young OGs on the corner, they selling D. I stand with them while I witness and felonies. Rolling trees and leaves, drive on the waves in case we gotta shoot the breeze. When the winter arrives, you can feel the sun's absence. So while it's here, we enjoying the summer madness. Summer, summer, summertime. Wanna sit back and rewind. Summer, summer, summertime. Summertime. Wanna sit back and unwind. Yeah. I said it's 88 degrees. Ice cream trucks come on, you hear the melodies. The young OGs on the corner, they selling D. I stand with them while I witness and felonies. Rolling trees and leaves, strap on the waist in case we gotta shoot the breeze. When the winter arrives, you can feel the sun's absence. So while I'm here, we enjoying the summer madness. Summer, summer, summertime. So while I'm here, we enjoying the summer madness. Wanna sit back and unwind. While I'm here, we enjoying the summer. Summer, summer, summertime. You summertime fine, come fuck with your bro. Wanna sit back and unwind. You summertime fine, come
Back in business.
it's the middle of July.
Back in business, back in business. What's going
Salute.
on? Little,
Yes, sir.
got some.
Yes, sir. Shout out to Khalil Jibran doing this thing with the music.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. One time for your mind.
Yeah,
Okay, we got some people in the chat that want you to cover some things. They feeling the history and all the science that's being dropped. So they saying did Baruti cover the
hey,
history of
appreciate you.
Liberia and Sierra Leone?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. One thing, let's get the connection right. It was buffering a little bit.
Good.
Let's see what's still loading up a bit. Let me. Hello, testing 1 2 3. Could
Yeah,
y'all hear
little,
me?
we can hear you. It's a little lag, but we can hear you. Yup. Have a little bit of technical difficulties, but we should be back in no time. You summertime fine, come fuck with you, bro. Salute, salute.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It's loading up a bit. I guess it's trying to progress.
Yeah, I could
I
see
guess it's
you way
trying to.
clear on this one.
Okay. Yes, I could see you. I could see you. It's doing its best though. It's probably because it's UPS truck. It should be leaving soon, but I could be wrong. Okay, so they asked about Liberia and Sierra Leone.
Yeah,
Okay, there we go. It looks like we're back. Okay, well, this is the thing right here. With Liberia and Sierra Leone over in West Africa, I'm not going to say that I'm a historian and that I know everything as it relates to Liberia and Sierra Leone, but as far as my understanding of the world, you know, as aforementioned during the early part of this commentary, the number one problem affecting people all over the world across this planet, and no places of no exception, including Liberia and Sierra Leone, is unfortunately the race problem. So whenever you have people of color that are struggling in any part of the world with the mistreatment, even if it's mistreatment amongst people that look like them, we can still go to the root cause of that problem. Because once we go to the root cause of that problem, then we know why the problems exist. And Liberia and Sierra Leone are of no exception. You see, wherever you have groups of people in which their lingua franca is a Western language, then best believe then you have a hint of where those problems come from. And no, we're not bashing an entire group of people. We're bashing a specific element within that group of people that are responsible for the problems that exist today, that are even affecting the group of people that belong to the group of folks that are causing these problems.
right.
You see what I mean? Like in Sierra Leone, the lingua franca I believe is Creole spelled Krio. And to my folks from Sierra Leone that are on here, Couche, Ayabadi.
Mm.
You know,
Talk that talk.
if the person from Sierra Leone, then he knows what I'm saying.
Mm. Okay, okay. So I want to ask you about your
Hmm.
trip to Egypt as well, and in that
Yes,
Nubia
sir.
area. How was it being an American young black man being in what the most revered civilizations in like history? Like, what was that like for you?
Hey, it was a great experience. To be honest with you, I'm still processing that, and that was over 10 years ago when I was in Egypt. That was a very
Wow.
monumental experience. Like for example, you know how we take the Empire State Building and the New York City skyline for granted, especially for folks that's living on the peninsula of Jersey City or Hudson County, because Hudson
Right.
County is nothing but an island anyway. It's like you have mainland New Jersey, and then you have Jersey City, North Bergen, and all that. It's like its own strip. Like it's very narrow. It's challenging to even drive on that strip. You know, it's like a little
Mm,
slim strip or whatever. But to get back to the subject matter at hand, I would see the pyramids every day. You see,
wow.
like it's right there. Like you have the city of Cairo, for example, but then you have the great pyramids of Giza. You know, Khufu, Khafre, and Menkaure. You will have those pyramids right over there, and then you'll have the various temples like assembled around the city of Cairo. And then you have the ancient city of Menefer, which is called Memphis now, you know, which is what Memphis, Tennessee is named after, you know, in which you had the various monuments and also the various architectural manifestations of that time. And to see a lot of those ruins and a lot of those rendezvous is very mind-boggling, very fascinating, and still enthralling to this day, to the point at which I'm still processing that experience.
Copy.
Mm,
Okay.
what an experience.
So coming back home, what was that like for you after being in a place like that where it's like such historical richness? How did it feel coming back to like everyday life in Jersey City?
Like to be honest with you, it was a cultural reshock, and the reason why I say it was a cultural reshock is because Egypt was a bit slower, and the folks over there had a lot more hospitality. Folks were more relaxed. Folks were more friendly, amicable. Don't get me wrong. Like when you're around any aggregated people, you have good people, you have bad people, or you have good people that have bad days. You see,
Right.
because you know we cannot just stigmatize folks as bad people. Sometimes good people have bad days, and sometimes good people make bad decisions, unfortunately, as well. So when I was over there, it felt very tranquil being around people that were very nice, very hospitable, and people that value time a bit more and realized that time wasn't just about achieving a certain objective to receive material gain. You know, folks got the time to talk and to know one another and help one another genuinely without agendas or anything of that nature. It was just a good vibe over there. And you'll receive more of that when you go to the southern part of Egypt, which is Nubia. And that's where you have the black Egyptians right there. And those are the direct descendants of the pyramid builders and the direct descendants of the pharaonic era of ancient Egypt or ancient Kemet. You know, and Kemet, if you translate that from the Medu Neter or the language Ren Kemetic, what they spoke, it translates to land of the black. Some people say land of the black because of the color of the ground after after the Nile, after the Nile River overflowed, onto the land. But really, some Egyptologists or some historians say that it means the black people because ancient Egypt was a predominantly black civilization according to our social construct of the classification of race in the Western Hemisphere. Meaning that if you were to take a ancient Kemite and put them in a time machine to be in the Americas, and they were driving the car and they were driving in a white suburban town, a white police officer would pull them over and classify them as black. If y'all get what I'm saying.
Right. So another question I want to ask too is about the Arab presence in Egypt and the history of the Arab presence and what that is. Being that we just spoke on racial constructs earlier.
Right. Hey, well, I'll put it like this. When Islam, as we know of it today, was formed after Prophet Muhammad ibn Abdullah. You see what I mean? Received Quran back in at the age of 40 in 10 AD. And also when he went on his journey after he went to Medina in 642 AD and started to converted folks. Folks. You had a lot of caliphates. That were formed. Because after the prophet, you had the various caliphs. Umar, Ali, and the various others. So a lot of these caliphates started to travel and spread the word to various parts of the world. But the thing about it is that they did it in a way in which it was like a jihadist way, meaning to get down and lay down, take a shahada or lay down, basically. So
Right.
you had the Arab invasion of Egypt around 640 and 642 AD. After or ACE after the Common Era, and then that was when we started to see an Islamic presence in Egypt and also various parts of the geopolitical designation that we call North Africa and the Middle East.
So is this in connection of the sub-Saharan slave trade?
Well, I would say the East African slave trade, because before there was a transatlantic slave trade by the Western Europeans, you had the Arab slave trade, which is the reason why, if we look at the language of Kiswahili, which is spoken in East Africa, which is the most popular African language spoken in the continent of Africa, because folks in Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, Burundi, parts of the Congo, they speak that language. You see, and also it's the lingua franca of Tanzania as well, not to mention. If you look at Kiswahili, the name Swahili is an Arabic term actually, which means coast. You know, the coast of East Africa, where Arab traders and Arab merchants or Arab slave traders came and traded with the indigenous African people of East Africa. So that's the reason why you have a lot of Arabic terms within that language, and also the various other languages in East Africa as well, like the term shukran or salam or bakshish and things of that nature. You know.
Right, right. So basically, a lot of the Islamic
Mm.
presence in that part of Africa came from the Arab slave trade or Arab invasion that started around what you said 640 AD.
640 to 642, yes. In Egypt, yes, it's 640 and 642, and then you had another invasion in the 13th and 14th century as well.
Hmm. So before that time in the 600s, what was the dominant religion in that part of Africa or Egypt or whatever?
Well, the thing about it is that the common religious practices in that area were basically, metaphorical and allegorical as it relates to objects of nature, like the sun or like the
More,
moon
more
or like the
mythology
sky.
things, right?
Well, I wouldn't say mythology. I would say more allegorical, more metaphorical, and also symbolic. Or
Got
some
you,
would
got,
say, or some would say animus. But I would put it in that classification, more of a spiritual kind of system. You see,
got you.
more of an organized spiritual kind of system, and then they apply metaphors and personifications to physical objects of nature. You see,
Right.
it was they would use the term anthropomorphos. Excuse me, like the term anthropology, anthropomorphization. You see what I mean?
Got you. Yeah.
Meaning that they will morph these objects into people, because anthro means people or person.
Mm, mm, copy.
Mhm.
So these certain allegories basically kind of was like destroyed when the religions came through and took power.
Yeah, destroyed or co-opted by Western religions, for
Mm,
political purposes, because the early Christians, because Christianity was in Egypt before Islam was. But of course, a lot of concepts in Christianity um, originated from the spiritual systems of ancient Kemet or ancient Egypt, or should I say the Nile Valley.
mm, mm.
Hmm.
Wow. So I'm gonna ask you another question to fast forward to today's time. In economic talk, there's been a lot of talk about a recession. We've just inserted trillions of dollars into the economy through the pandemic.
Mm.
In- Inflation is up to I believe 9%. Um, and everybody's predicting some type of economic turmoil soon to come. What are your thoughts about that?
Hey, well, the thing about it is that people of color have been in economic turmoil for centuries, so it's nothing new. It's
Mm,
nothing new. All it is just the usual suspects performing the usual machinations in order to maintain power. That's all that
facts.
that basically is. But if we look at any empire, the economic turmoil usually leads to the disintegration of that empire or that power structure. That's how the
So
Roman Empire fell. You
Are we
see,
witnessing
that's
in real
how.
time the fall of America?
I don't see America being of no exception if folks don't get their act together.
Mm,
But of course, I'm hoping for the best. But the thing about it is that we need to learn from history.
right. Mm, okay.
Mhm.
So I want to wrap things up with this last question. I love everything we got the chance to speak about. This was a crazy amount of value. So I want to ask you this
Excellent.
one. I want to ask you this one thing. What is one thing you would tell 16-year-old Baruti to help him navigate his journey?
What I would tell 16-year-old to me is to read, study, and continue to ask questions,
Mm,
no matter what anyone may think. Read, study, and continue to ask questions.
mm,
Because once you do that, then more than likely it'll lead you to the right direction. It may not feel right, but it's not about feelings. It's about reality. But
mm,
one needs to start asking questions. And the truth may not always be appetizing, but it could lead you to the direction where you probably should be.
mm.
So
Absolutely.
generally speaking, probably more, but generally speaking, that's what I would ask though. You know. But let me
Got you.
ask you a question. What's your take on the red pill?
Man, I think it's needed, man. I think it's needed. I think it's very necessary for the evolution of men in this 21st century. Because
Hmm.
my journey in that type of space is kind of like a deja vu sort of thing, right?
Okay.
Because when I was around 14, like I had like I guess that I would be what they would have called a beta male orbiter or whatever you want to call it. But I had
Hmm.
these certain I was buying into these certain ideals of like romanticism and how you had to treat a woman and how she likes to be treated, and you know what I'm saying. Then I got into I got around some of my friends and I started witnessing the levels of savagery that they was exhibiting, and I started seeing the
Right.
results. You know what I'm saying? And I'm just like, whoa, this
Hmm.
is crazy. To the point to where as though even one of my chicks that I had around that time gravitated to one of my bros that was way more, you know what I'm saying, savage while I was dealing with her. So that was like a major eye opener when I was like 15 years old. So
Right.
when I started to become the quote unquote Chad, it was a whole different lifestyle. It was like a rock star lifestyle, and it got me a tremendous amount of results. Um,
Right.
then growing up to like focusing on my music more and not even dealing with women, it put me in like a MGTOW sort of space where it's like I was going my own way, and I'm more of a like a Sigma male. You know what I'm saying? And even that was interesting because I got tons of results doing that too. So it's like whether it was like womanizing or just completely ignoring women, I got better results doing that than the flower bringing and all the other shit. You know what I'm saying? So for me, uh, even growing up, right? Because for me, it was very interesting because we was able to witness the introduction of social media. So
Right. Right. Time.
you know what I'm saying? So I remember the era of social media before OnlyFans, before girls' heads was like super big, you know, when it was a little more humble,
Hmm.
you know? And
Right.
that was a whole different time, you know what I'm saying? And then the further we got into social media, the more thirsty dude started to boost the ego of certain women that caused them to have an inflated sense of value in the sexual marketplace. So it kind of warped the valuation of everything. And to be frank, what just came to me is that era of social media and like young dating, I guess, is similar to like the .com bubble in '01. You know what I'm saying? Whereas like you have all these social media personalities who are like stocks, who basically get pumped and dumped in the literal sense and the figurative sense. You know what I'm saying?
Mm.
And it just was very interesting growing up and becoming a man. It was a whole different experience to when you're young. Cause when you're young, money is not really a factor in you getting girls. Like nobody's really working, everybody
Right.
going to school. But now you're getting older, these chicks want to get flown out, vacation, expensive dates, they want bags, they want this, they want that. And then a lot of time if they can't
Hmm.
get that, they will like, start the bashment. Oh, these broke niggas and this, that, and the third. So I started noticing a certain like social narrative that started to gain legs. Like, and it seemed like for the past 5 to 10 years, it's been a lot of feminism and LGBTness that's been just dominating everything else. And it seems like men just have to take a step back. And like men, we have to walk on eggshells because we don't want to be called we don't want people to think we misogynist or sexist or creepy or whatever the case may be. So finding that space was like some sort of refuge. I don't know if your thing froze.
Salute, salute.
Salute, salute.
Yes, sir. Yeah, the internet connection. But I was following you. It just got into the matrix.
Where
Where now I get what you're saying. So from where we left off, you said we entered into the era in which you didn't want to be perceived as creepy and
yeah, so it's like men really have no defense, like the average man, because um, how can I explain it? You could easily be thrown into these archetypes of something like we spoke on earlier, toxic masculinity, misogynist. A woman could easily like place that label upon you and like kind of destroy you, and you have to like in those situations you're guilty till you're proven innocent.
right.
You know what I'm saying? And it was just a lot of other things that I started learning and being hip to too, that it just wasn't right that what was going on, you know?
Right.
And when I got to these spaces of these red pill content creators, they weren't afraid to speak on it. No matter how ostracized they may have been, like it was refreshing to hear somebody else speak on it. You know what I'm saying? It just was refreshing for me.
Understandable, understandable, and it's definitely a conversation that needs to get had. A whole bunch of conversations that need to get had, but it needs to get followed up with, thought, speech, action, but most importantly, perspective as well.
Mm,
Like understanding the origins or the roots of these situations, and then building from there, and also us prioritizing what's important as well. You see, from my perspective, as it relates to, the red pill digital revolution that's going on, because just men and women going back and forth complaining about one another is counterproductive as well. I was a part of that confusion as well, obviously a couple of years ago. But the thing about it is that with me just reflecting, me doing a lot of inquiring, and also with me doing a lot of introspecting and reflecting, it's me coming into an understanding that all of this is by design. And then from there, it's a matter of moving forward. Because according to my understanding, what is a natural law is that the more productive one is, meaning that the more that one could solve problems, the more attractive that one is to the opposite sex. Because we live in a material world, and usually the folks that are rewarded are the folks that can solve problems.
facts.
You see, like the one that could fix things, or the one that could come up with solutions, or the one that could make someone feel better about a certain situation. Those are
Fact.
the ones that could solve problems. Now, as it relates to the dynamic in the various other inner cities amongst folks that are the most impoverished and deprived, and even though people of color are unfortunately oppressed and deprived, but there of course different levels of that. The thing about it is that in that situation, unfortunately, the one that solves problems, within those elements are the ones that could provide the most security. And usually the one that provides the most security are the ones that impose the most force. And the thing is that that's what women are attracted to in those kind of worlds right there. That's where we have the bad boy dynamic or the bad boy paradigm or the bad boy concept, because that person is looked at as the person that's the strongest within that confined environment.
Facts.
You see,
And,
at least from my
and
observation.
that's very true. Another reason that I appreciate the red pill community too is that it really dispelled me things that I was like spellbound to, and
Like
kind of
what?
like one of them is kind of, I guess, dealing with single mothers, to be honest.
Okay, okay,
You know, and yeah, once I got, you always know certain things in the back of your mind, but you kind of whatever. But after I went through those experiences, and then I like parallel my experiences with other men that was like speaking on it, and I'm like, yeah, that ain't really like something I want to like jump back into. You know what I'm saying? Because that comes with a lot of extra things that I really don't want. You know what I'm saying? But once again, you as a young person, and that's why like elders and like strong men around you growing up is important. Because if you don't have that, you're going to subscribe to the ideas and narratives that get pushed on a mainstream level. I don't know if you got froze again.
it froze up a little
Or-
bit.
I think I know.
Right, right. I did get froze. We left off at the part where you talked about single mothers and experiences.
Yeah. And I didn't really think into it, but in the red
So
pill community,
you're
yo,
back on. You're back on. I think.
yeah, you froze. Let me get you unfroze real quick.
Hello,
Hello?
hello.
I don't know. I can hear you. I can't see you.
I'm here. Yes, sir.
All right,
Let's
there you
see.
go.
How about now? There we go. There we go.
Word.
There we go. Now, but I heard what you were saying.
Yeah. And also, it's not just the fact that it's just a single mother, because it's not no shade against that. Because
Yeah, yeah. Salute, salute. Things happen.
word. And I was raised by a single mother, but
Kudos.
it's just the fact that when you see the science that goes into that, you know what I'm saying? Because when they're young, when women are young these days, they want to have fun. They go through that phase where they want to deal with the bad boys or whatever.
Hmm.
They go out, party, whatever the case may be.
Right.
Then it comes an age from 27 to 35, the wall, the danger zone, whatever you want to call it, is when they want to clean things up and kind of get with somebody that they kind of knew they should have been with the whole time, but they feel like this age frame in their life is the point where they should be doing that. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And when I start getting into the real psychology of what influencing these women to make these decisions, it just make me it just put me aware to a whole new level of reality that I wasn't even really thinking about, really. I was just I just flown with it. I wasn't even aware to a certain extent, you know. But to be around other men who kind of like, yo, this is what it is, this is da 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 da. it saved me a lot of strife.
It'll do that.
Where
Yeah, it'll do that. And that red pill rage. Did you experience red pill rage or nah?
oh, I think I'm still experiencing it a little bit. I'm not gonna lie.
Understandable, understandable. Right,
Yeah, yeah,
right. I mean, but that comes with it. Like whenever that awakening happens, it comes with it. It's like the metaphor of when you had to wake up in the morning, to go to school or to do an objective. You're cranky when you wake up a lot of the time, but then once you get the breakfast and you accept the fact that you're up and you get your nutrients in, then you're all right for the most part.
nah, facts. But to be honest, I don't know if I'm gonna keep this in the stream. I might put this on Patreon, but I resorted to tricking. No,
Right, right. Well. As far as that, well, keep going. I'm sorry about that. I didn't mean to cut you off.
that's pretty much the gist of it. It's like if I'm gonna deal with these certain levels of hypergamy, I'm gonna do it in the business transaction where it's convenient to me and I get to agree to the terms in a clear fashion. Not uh this cat and mouse game that everybody else is playing.
Right. Hey, I agree 1,000% because as aforementioned before, universal law is that a person, pardon me, is attractive to someone if they can provide value and if they can solve problems. So if we're dealing with
Absolutely.
an economy, as aforementioned, that is undergoing a recession right now, in which folks try to debate me saying that, oh, this is not going to happen. I'm sure you saw the threads on Facebook. But
Hmm.
I stated, look, this is going to happen, and we could bet 1,400 right now, but you're probably not even going to have it because 1,400 is going to be worth 2,400 anyway. So the price has gone up. But anyway, when we're dealing with a recession and we're dealing with women that have unfortunately made bad decisions or made irresponsible decisions, and they want to get compensated for those decisions, it unfortunately creates a moral hazard where it's like these women get rewarded for their bad decisions, yet at the
Right.
same time though, with us being biological creatures and males for the most part having a biological inclination for the opposite sex, in order to alleviate a lot of the red tape and to alleviate a lot of the distractions in order to appease our biological makeup, if compensation solves problems, then why not? Because compensation is the law of the universe anyway, meaning that
Facts.
meaning that what you have is less valuable to what someone else may have. So one voluntarily engages in exchange with the other person that has something of value for that specific time and space. And then that's when they engage with one another for the outcome or the result of satisfaction. But in this case, we're talking about the dating pool. And if one has to compensate for what the woman may deem as valuable for the woman that you're courting, and then that woman sees what you have as valuable in exchange for what she sees as less value, then there's a meeting of the minds, and then from there you all could engage in with what y'all want to engage in. And in this case, we're talking about the term romance.
Facts.
You see, so I'm not really knocking that right there, and I think that makes a whole lot of sense as it relates to where things are going and where things are. And it's always been like that, but it's just that things have evolved and transformed, within time. You see
Yeah,
what
because
I'm saying?
that's the oldest profession.
Right, right, exactly. They say that it's the oldest. They say that it's the oldest profession right there. So the thing about it is that as it relates to the situation at hand, and also people of color now this is where things are going to go 360 based on the conversation, right?
Uh-huh.
We have to ask ourselves, what is more valuable, engaging with this woman or doing something else that will end a lot of the problems that exist today that hinder us from being the men that we should be. Meaning before we engage with dating or possibly having intercourse with the opposite sex, and this applies for women as well, we may need to ask the questions: what do you want to do? Where do you want to do it? Why do you want to do it? What would be the most constructive and productive outcome of doing this? And will doing this lead to us ending a lot of the issues that are prevailing today? And then from there, from asking the most questions, then we could see what kind of caliber of person that we're dealing with. And if dealing with that person is even worth it, just in case that leads to a creation of new life.
Right.
Because if someone of color is giving birth to someone under the conditions that we're living in, they're in essence giving birth to someone that is another either prisoner of oppressive system of racism, or they're giving birth to someone that's another 21st century digital metaversal slave.
Facts.
So the thing about it is, it's a high probability that under the conditions that we're living in, so it's a matter of thinking about things deeply in that way, and then that could eradicate a lot of confusion, because who knows, after all asking all those questions, the woman may get uninterested, but who knows, that could probably save you as well, or save me as well, or anyone who wants to pose these kind of questions. That's why these days when I'm with women, I may turn the date into a lecture.
Mm.
You see what I mean? Like, and then a woman may not call back, but it's like, hey, at least I disclose what she will get herself into from dealing with me. You see what
Right.
I'm saying? For the women that don't want to be objectified, or have not, pardon me, objectified themselves in a sexualized manner. For a woman that has already done that, then hey, it is what it is. But for a woman that claims that she's looking for something long term, or then we have to ask these questions so that we
Right.
can know what we're dealing with, and they can know what they're dealing with.
Mm.
You see, and then that gets into the concept of soulmate and things of that nature. A so-called soulmate, whatever that is, under the system that we're living in.
What you think
You
about
see,
soulmates?
well, my definition of a soulmate is someone is someone that you could engage with, whose so-called romance and sexual engagement will lead towards productive and constructive results for the people that's engaging in romance, and for the constructive result of compromising, racism and also oppression. That's what a soulmate is in my viewpoint.
What about all the fairy tale stuff that come with having a soulmate? What about that?
Oh, that's all mythology right there. You know what I mean? Yeah, that's all mythology right there. That's not anything to be taken seriously in the real world. You see, and folks that believe in that, then they're living in a dream, and they'll get awakened from that dream as well.
A lot of people believe in that. Soulmates, soul ties, twin flames. They download apps to see how astrologically compatible they are with their partner. It's a lot of that going on.
Exactly, and you have a few folks out in the Bay Area making a lot of money from those apps as well, from the
Mm,
naivety of a lot of people.
facts.
You know, making money from the naivety of a lot of people. Instead of being logical when it comes to things.
Mm,
And asking questions, and get into answers when it comes to things. Meaning that we had to be real with ourselves. Well, engaging with this woman, or woman, if you're engaging with this man, will it be of constructive value? If it's not of constructive value, then folks are wasting their time. You see what
mm,
I mean? That's why, recently with the woman that I've been conversing with, that's what the discussion has been. And if it's not that, then we got to get straight to the point here. You see, like meaning that, hey, if you conduct yourself in this way, in the sexualized manner, then and I'm interested in that way, then what would be the terms of you know queen or shorty of engaging in that way? But then one would have to ask themselves, is that a productive utilization of time? Because we've been manipulated and indoctrinated to be hypersexualized ourselves.
that's a fact.
When other species, they become sexual when it's mating season.
Mm,
You see, not just for pleasurable purposes. You see
mm,
what I'm saying? Because a lot of the time, dating and sexual intercourse is a waste of time. Because
fact.
what was the constructive outcome of achieving that, if that is an achievement? You see, that's my thing with the red pill community. My They say that, oh, if you do this, that, or the other, you'll be able to attract more women. But attract more women for what? And to do what? And then I had to ask the question, why? You see, because then that gets into soul searching right there. Why does one need to engage into sexual intercourse all of the time. I understand the biological
Mm.
inclinations, but a lot of the reasons are socially constructed as well. Because, like I said, other species engage into sexual intercourse for mating purposes.
Mm.
Because there are various ways to find pleasure as well. And then we had to ask the question, what is pleasure?
Mm.
Because a lot of these concepts are socially constructed, and then we need to ask the question, who constructed these constructs and why?
Right.
And where did it come from? Because one thing I do know is that centuries ago, our grandparents were forced to engage into a lot of these activities because the more humans that are produced means the more folks that could work on those plantations.
Facts.
And the more income that is or revenue that is generated from the sale of these humans
Mm.
to other folks that own the humans. So we need to be very careful when it comes to certain concepts or certain cultural patterns or certain traits that are glorified and celebrated in these different spaces. And in this case, we're talking about the red pill and we're talking about the manosphere. But I get what you mean as far as the compensation aspect, because men men are supposed to be
You save a lot of
security for
time.
women anyway, based on science.
Yeah, you
See,
save a
or
lot of
males
time.
are supposed to be women.
Facts.
Right,
In a
right.
normal situation, right? You got a quarter woman.
Hmm.
You gotta find her.
Yeah, that's true. That's
Figure
true.
out.
That's true.
You gotta text her. Fake have a conversation with her for I don't know how much amount of time. You gotta go on a date with her. It's not guaranteed you're gonna get what you want from those first couple dates. So it's just a whole bunch of extra time and money that's being wasted in pursuit. When I feel like the other way, if you
Right.
just go direct, it save you time and money. You know, if that's the outcome that you're seeking, you know.
Undeniably, undeniably, that's true. That's true. But with any human interaction, the factor that's most important is the trust factor. You see what I mean? And like I said, the definition of period of time and space. So in this case, there has to be a trust, between who one is engaging with as well,
Absolutely,
which is very important, because
absolutely.
if a woman is, a lot of these women they sleep around as well. I had a conversation with one of my people, I would say a couple of days ago, and he was complaining about the fact that women on social media glorify the fact that they sleep with multiple men and all of that. So I said, right, well, that's their prerogative, fortunately or unfortunately, But the thing about it is that we need to do the vetting as well with who we're dealing with, because now these days we don't know what gender one belongs to, unfortunately.
Say that last part
We
again.
might start. Yeah, because unfortunately these days we don't know what gender a person belongs to these days. We had to start looking at
Facts,
birth certificates now.
facts. So when they gonna try to convince us that
Straight up.
gender
Might
don't
start looking at
ain't even a
birth
thing
certificates, baby.
for real?
Right. Exactly. Exactly. So so we had to start looking at birth certificates, and since we're engaging in compensation, right, with these women, right, or intend to engage with romance with women, then of course with that comes with recommendations, that comes with
Mm.
references. So I'll tell the woman, I hear what you're saying, but what does your friend say? Or do you have someone that you went to school with? Or do you have an employer or a fellow employee who could vouch for you?
Right.
So so that's to be the vetting stage as well,
Mm.
so that one couldn't even know who they're dealing with,
And
which is
I bring
which is
that
extremely important now.
absolutely, and I bring that concept up too because it seemed like all the female rappers these days is that's what they're promoting is selling pussy. From the song WAP to I ain't messing with no broke niggas to you got to spend the bag to do all this. That's inadvertently what they're promoting.
Right. Say that. Say what you said before the last part. It was in the Matrix for a bit.
Also, I said all the female rappers are promoting that indirectly. They saying, "Oh, I got what? I got the WAP, but I don't cook or clean. I
Okay.
ain't messing with no broke niggas. He got to spend the bag. He got to take me out. He got to fly me to this place. He got to buy me this Birkin." And it's like
Hmm.
they indirectly selling pussy that in that way as well. You know, so
Right.
I feel like it's a certain market that's getting inflated in the dating market, and I feel as though the business side of things will just disrupt everything, right? Because if I'm not mistaken, prostitution just became legal in Las Vegas.
Right. Yeah, it's been legal for a while now. You know.
Yeah, yeah. So it's like if that becomes a more socially acceptable thing, I think it does a lot.
Right. And it'll lower. And also, but I tell you one thing: the prostitutes will get mad about that because it's going to lower prices.
Facts. It's gonna and this brings me to my next point too. Being in the red pill community, I learned about the newest mutation of the community. Well, newest to me, which is the
Mhm.
passport bros.
Right. I heard that before.
You heard
Yes,
about
yes.
them?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Uh,
Oh yeah.
What you feel about their movement? What's your views on them?
Hey, that's their prerogative, meaning that if they want to go outside of the country to, to deal with women that they could afford to deal with, then hey, by all means, because really what one does in their bedroom is their prerogative. As long as they're dealing with someone that's of age and is consensual, you know,
Facts.
then that's their prerogative right there. So candidly speaking, I'm not knocking it. And a lot of the international women, they know what time it is because they pop up on black, on so-called Black Americans Facebook pages sending friend requests sometimes, because I guess the
Mm.
word got back to them about what's going on over here, and about the grievances,
Right.
that many deal with in the
Yeah.
dating pool.
Yeah. They very aware.
Where it up, so I don't know if you receive them with the women in Colombia and DR, they sending them friend requests
Mm.
and all that,
Send them my way, Rui.
huh?
I said, send them my way.
And, hey, but like I said, there has to be a vetting. There has to be vetting going on because
Absolutely. Absolutely.
yeah, because in this day and age, in this technological age, and this age of multiple genders and things of that nature, it's like we don't know who's who.
Man.
Yeah, we don't know, we don't know who's who. It's the world that we live in, and like I said, like the purpose, one of the purposes of me being on this platform is not to judge anyone based on their decisions, but disclosure is still very important because you cannot deceive anyone. I will say that you cannot deceive
Absolutely.
someone. Meaning that if you decided that you wanted to be something else, then disclose that
Word.
and go
It
from
should.
there.
Yeah, it shouldn't be no secrecy about what you claim to be so open about. You know.
Exactly, because deception is unethical and is unlawful to a degree, but really, most importantly, it's
Definitely.
unethical right there.
Cause that's a form
You
of
know,
consent. You violating somebody's consent when you do that.
exactly, violating someone's consent, and when one violates someone, one 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 could reciprocate that in ways in which one doesn't like, which could be very
Absolutely.
problematic for for not only the person that's being deceptive, but the family members and everyone else.
Yeah.
Because when someone gets hurt, it's not just the selfish person getting hurt. You're hurting the feelings of other people that may have affection for the person that decided they wanted to be fraudulent
Facts.
or deceitful by
Yep.
capitalizing on the biological inclination of the person that has interest, but that person thinks that you're one thing when really you're something else. So I'm
Facts.
not saying that I'm pro or anti any of this for the sake of this discussion, because that's not what I do on public platforms like this. But what I'm going to state to folks that may be watching this that are a part of what I'm talking about is that you need to disclose. According to ethics, morals, and principles, disclosure is key. You see?
Mm.
folks need to know what they're getting themselves into, or what they're not
Fact.
going to get themselves into.
Mm.
You see what I'm saying?
Real though. That's real shit.
You know,
That information could save a life.
exactly, could save a life. Like for example, you know, folks could hide what gender they were, but I can't hide my phenotype, just like you
Yep.
can't hide your phenotype.
Yep.
We can't hide that. You see what I'm saying?
Yep.
But you got folks that you know, I'm not saying everyone in that community that does that, but you have some folks that don't disclose anything, and then when things come out later, it causes more confusion and cause problems that didn't need to exist. We have enough problems, especially people of color, enough problems that we need to get rectified and get solved, and we don't need to add more confusion by being deceitful towards one another. We need disclosure, and we need to be courteous to one another. We need to show courtesy to one another. You know, we don't have to agree on each other's lifestyles, but we need to be courteous and transparent towards one another. You see, transparent. So, meaning that if you're a transgender, be transparent about being that. Stand by your
Mm.
work. Stand on principles. Meaning that if that's what you want to engage in, you need to stand on that. Stand on that as a man or stand on that as a woman. You see, oh, because because either way you have to pick a side, and if you change sides, stand on that and disclose that. Because if you don't stand on that, you're not being a real man or a real woman.
Hello.
You're being a sub man or a sub woman, no matter
Hello.
what side you're. And
Hello.
you're disrespecting your own community by doing that. You're hurting your own community by doing that. Forget me. Let's say, oh, this guy, he don't know what he's talking about. Okay, forget me then. You're hurting your own brothers and sisters, or reformed brothers and reformed sisters by doing that and putting them in harm's way by
Mm.
bad actors out there or actors that are not courteous. Since we live in a world where discourtesy is very high from what we see, or
Mm.
discourtesy, excuse me.
Mm.
So the reality of it all is that as far as the dating pool, you know, there are good people, but also there are a lot of good people that make bad decisions, or good people
Right.
that are misguided, or good people that exhibit bad behavior. And the thing about it is that by eliminating a lot of that is through transparency and asking the uncomfortable questions. And if it sacrifices, let it be. There's 9 billion people in the world, 9 billion, and the majority are women. You see, and the majority of the so-called
Mm.
women were born women.
Mm.
Y'all probably get that later.
Mm.
you know. So the reality of it all is this, compensation. But like anything, like when you go to a store, or when you're about to invest in a stock, you got to do your research. You see what I mean?
Fact.
So if one is going to get compensated, then I need to know who I'm dealing with. Meaning
Facts.
that I may have to, meaning that if I'm going to compensate, anyone hypothetically, then a deposit may have to go to your exes, so that
Mm.
they can reciprocate with information. Like when you apply for a job and you get letters of recommendation, or when or when or when you eat at a restaurant, you go to Yelp and see the ratings. If we're going to play like that, then we need to see your proof of work, and we need to get comments, feedback, and ratings from folks that you dealt with, so that we could know who we're dealing with, so that we could feel comfortable with the compensation.
Facts. Mm.
Hey, if the world is changing, hey, we'll adapt to the change.
Yeah.
Hello,
Mm.
hello,
Yeah, I'm here.
hello.
Yo, yo, check, check, check. You hear me?
Yeah, yes, sir. I'm back.
Yeah.
I'm back.
I can't see you, but I can hear you.
Right, right. But you get what I'm saying, right?
Facts. Mm-hmm.
Yes, yes, sir. The person said ice cream and pop walks.
Yeah, I think.
Oh, okay.
That
Oh, as far as dating goes, I mean, hey,
word.
yes, I can hear you perfectly.
The,
It's like freezing in and out. Hello,
yeah, I'm here.
hello.
Yeah, you hear me?
Yes, sir. Ice cream and park walk. Okay, okay. Hey, well, as far as ice cream and park walk, it's but what are you saying? You could keep going until we get this connection right. There we go. It's back on.
Yeah. Um. So yeah. Um.
Come on,
Anything else you
StreamYard. Come on, Wi-Fi.
word?
You must be delayed.
All right, there we go.
Hello, hello,
Yeah.
hello. Hello, back on.
Yeah.
Let me see. I'm going to talk to you. I'm going to talk to you in the chat. Could you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, okay. Salute. But yeah. But as far as like the dates and the parks and the ice cream, it's all about cost and benefit analysis. Like does it make sense? Is it of constructive value? Because if it's not, then it's not worth it. But if it is, then by all means. And and what I thought about is that we can't worry about what another man is doing with women. If the woman is engaging with another man, but dealing with the ice cream and park walks will be of constructive value, then hey, one could do that. You see, but if not, then I wouldn't engage in it.
Facts.
It's best to be in the straight to the point type of way because fair exchange is no robbery. Fair exchange is no robbery.
Mm,
You know,
mm.
word up.
So do you see yourself getting married or having children in the near future?
Yeah, that's a well, that's a tough one. I don't see it. I really don't see it, but you never know. But if, like I said, if it happens, then there has to be a common understanding on a lot of subject matters, meaning that there will have to be a lot of questions, answers that have to happen, a lot of probably uncomfortable questions that will have to get asked on both ends, full disclosure, and then from there we have to come to a common understanding. But if there's no common understanding, then there's no marriage. You
Mm,
see, as far as procreation, sometimes that just happens, but I don't plan on procreating if there's no common understanding because it would just be counterproductive for the most part.
right.
It'll be high probability of confusion, and we
And
have
let me
enough.
ask, right. So
Yes, sir.
would you sample some of the passport bros ways and look elsewhere for a wife to build a family?
Salute, salute, salute.
You can hear me?
Um, we live in a globalized society, so no matter where one, I don't think that would make a difference. No matter where on the planet I would find women. So would I get a woman overseas? Is a possibility. Would I not get a woman overseas and the woman here? Hello, it cut out again.
Yeah. You finished the last overseas part you said?
Hello.
Yo. Nice technical difficulties. Once you get back on, we answer the last question. I think we're gonna close down the stream. It's been a great stream. It's been a great stream. It's my first 3 hour episode. Glad to have a Baruti to God. You know what I'm saying? So I want to get him back on here before we close it out.
Right here on the other side of the world. So I don't think it makes a difference from my perspective,
Right.
but that's just me.
Copy. Can you hear me? There you go. All right, y'all. That was the episode of Baruti Libre. Hope you guys enjoyed everything. Get back in one more time.
Khalil Jibran.
Salute, salute.
Yeah, yeah. Salute. God. Been on for a while.
Salute, God. I'll be 3 hours in. We're gonna close it out right now. I'm glad you came back into the stream. Let the people know where they can find you, where they can how they can support you, where they can follow you at. Still has some technical difficulties. Appreciate everybody for tuning in. You still here, 3 hour mark. It's monumental right here. First grade of many. Keep moving.
These days, but
Another episode of Khalil Jibran Experience. One time for your mind, two times for your spine. We out, baby. Peace.